Okay, welcome to our New York Giants preservation meeting tonight, January 31st. And from this point on this week until Sunday, actually till Monday, we will be the Willie Mays Preservation Society in honor of the greatest baseball player there ever was. And you can see over my shoulder, I don't know where I am on the screen, but there's a new emblem there. Do you guys see it?
Yep.
Good, because I don't know where I am. But that's for another story. And we are doing this in response to the San Francisco Giants, Adam Swiggs and John Shea setting up Say Hey Willie Mays Appreciation Day, which will take place on Sunday, February 4, 2024, 24/24/24. Before we start our loving with and about Willie Mays, just got to give you some other things going on. Next week, we'll have James Elfers, who will be talking about the tour to end all tours, the story of baseball, 1913 to 14 World War involving the Giants and the White Sox. We need to mute ourselves, please.
I don't know how to do the,
I'm seeing that.
Barry, I don't know how to do that yellow.
Don't worry about it. I will call on you.
Okay.
Just some other news. Last Saturday, the group was spoken about by me on the Ed Randall Remember When show.
Progress.
I think we came out really good at that, and I'm very, very pleased. If you happen to be in Cooperstown on Saturday, I will be speaking about my new book. And again, the book has a lot to do with our group. And for those who bought it and reviewed it, or both or one of them, many of you sent in donations.
Because it's a
Got to mute. Many of you
spoiler.
sent in donations, and I'm very proud. We're going to be sending this to the Giants. Can you see that?
No.
Yeah, 2,000.
$2,237.20.
Wow. Yay.
I will be mailing this out on Monday. So if any other happen to arrive in my house, the amount will go up. So you guys should be very proud of whoever donated. And if you didn't donate, no biggie. But if you want, there's still time. So let me just go over some other things before we start to open up the Zoom to everybody. So Sunday, the Giants will be doing stuff at Oracle Park. They're going to be doing stuff with the scoreboard. There's going to be a banner held above the Mays statue. City Hall is going to be lit up in orange and black.
Nice.
I did try to do some of that stuff here, but to the deaf ears. So,
Gary, there's gonna be one more thing, Gary.
yes.
The number 24 cable car is going to get at Hyde Street and Fisherman's Wharf at 2:40, and they're going to ring their bell 24 times.
That's great. Wonderful. And I'm sure anything I get, I will send out to you regarding, doesn't matter where we live, but if it's related to Mays and this weekend, it will be sent out to you. So I changed the Facebook page. It still says New York Giants Preservation Society, but I put up a new banner, and it's of the catch, and it says on it, the ball, just like the one behind my shoulder, is also there. So that's been changed. And that's about it. It's going to be a great night speaking to you and you speaking to us. And just be very cognizant of the time. We can be here all night. I don't care about that. What I mean, the time is, take 5 minutes, the most 6 minutes, and then we're going to move on to the next person.
Raise the volume of the sound.
Okay. I'm going to turn over the program to a couple of people first, then I will speak, and then everybody else will speak. But I think the most important person who's in here right now is the author of this fabulous book, 24, John Shea. Oh, there I am. Yay, I'm here. John wrote this book and spoke to us a couple of years ago. He wrote a gorgeous article.
Greetings, hi. Hello?
He wrote a great article yesterday that I posted and he sent out to you all. Hope you had a chance to read it. It's great. So I'm gonna pick a few people to go, and then the rest of us will go. But for now, John Shea, you are up. John, go ahead.
Well, I'm hardly the most important in the room. I can see who's here, and that is totally false. I just happen to be a messenger.
And a damn good one.
And also, I'm not necessarily working on this project, event, announcement, festival of 2424, but I'm elated to report the news. So, but thanks, Gary. I mean, and hello, everybody. Can't thank you enough for asking me to join today's Willie Mays Love-In. And obviously, Willie, the common thread among us all. And I've listened to a lot of these tapes from these sessions you guys have on Thursdays that Gary emails out later because it's kind of still during the workday here when you guys start. And no matter what the topic, no matter what the debate, no matter what the focus, it always seems to come back to Willie, which is fitting. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys, the New York Giants Preservation Society, or the Willie Mays Preservation Society as we speak, while also shouting out the Giants in the city of San Francisco for stepping up with this 2424 celebration. And it's really bringing more awareness to the greatest player in history, the player that changed so many of our lives and put us in a better mood every day and taught us how to be better human beings. And also Adam Swig, who's really the architect of all of this. He's the one who brought attention to everyone, many, many weeks ago, that this special date was coming. And Adams actually reached out to, I think, half the city's restaurants to participate with Willie Mays special deals on that day. Pizza for $24, coffee for $2.40, and on and on. And not just at 2:24 p.m. or 2:24 a.m. I think it's all day. But I just wanted to say that whenever I think of Willie Mays, I think of friendship. And I don't mean between him and me, I mean everybody. I've been lucky enough to watch the man play and have a job where I could meet the man and write about the man and become eventually a friend of the man, which, as the 12-year-old me isn't believing any of this. And I'm not alone. I mean, everyone in this room is a friend of Willie Mays, even if you never met him, because that's who he is. That's what he's all about. I mean, if you like the Giants, you're a friend of Willie Mays. If you like baseball, you're a friend of Willie Mays. If you like American heroes, you're a friend of Willie Mays. If you like people who created a better world, if you like people who change people's lives, you're a friend of Willie Mays. And I remember sitting in Murph's office in the Giants clubhouse one day with Willie, and Greg Papa walked in and asked Willie to be on his Chronicle Live show, which back then was a real cool daily show at the time. Not sure why it's no longer a thing, but Papa had asked Willie many times, could you be on the show? Could you be on the show? And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. So this time, Willie says, yeah, I'll be on the show. I'll go on if he comes on with me. And he was pointing my way. And I turned around to see who else was in the room. And it's like, whoa, Papa said, I mean, he was talking about me. And, obviously Papa had no choice. If you wanted Willie, he had to take me. So it was a real cool thing. It was supposed to be 60 minutes. It turned into much longer, went on and on and on. And why wouldn't it? Went over every one of the 5 tools, or as Gary likes to say, 6 tools. And when it came time late in the show to talk about the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds, Papa asked Willie, you know, what do you think? And Willie said, well, it's up to the writers to vote him in. And Papa said, well, there's a writer sitting right next to you. And Willie said, that's not a writer, that's my friend. And I think I was in shock the rest of the filming. I had no idea what followed. But anyway, my point is, he is a friend to all of us. And there's really nothing better in the world than that.
John, thank you so much. And for those who don't know, the definitive book by John is just fabulous. John also was a consulting producer of the Maze documentary on HBO. John, thank you so much. All right. One more, and then I'm going to go over to Norm. Jay Horwitz from the Mets. Jay, did you want to say something? Jay, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Can you hear
can.
me? Yeah, it's just being honored to be on with this group, and like everybody, Willie was my childhood idol, and I used to see him at the writers' dinners a lot in New York, and he always asked me, he said, "When are you guys going to retire my number? When are you going to retire my number?" And when our new ownership came in, the first thing was Steve Cohen. I let him know of the promise that that the Payson family had made Willie when he came over here, and for some reason it fell through the cracks, and without any hesitancy, Willie, the Cohens approved the retirement in our old Tireman's Day game. We did it, and Michael Mays was there representing the family, and it was just a real big thrill to see the number up there. I went to the Polo Grounds to see him play with my mother and father, and and I don't really know Willie that well. I just worship him from afar. I'm just glad, thanks to our ownership, we were able to get that done. And I've been with the Mets 45 years now, and getting his number retired is probably one of my number 1 or 2 accomplishments I'll always be proud of. And again, it's an honor to be on with this group.
We are so grateful, Jay, that you're here and that you helped, because many of us wanted that done. Norm Coleman.
It's my pleasure to introduce Ed Montague to our group. Ed was a major league umpire for 34 seasons. He umpired 4 All-Star games, as well as 99 postseason contests, including 6 different fall classics, and he was crew chief for 4 of those fall classics. Ed was the first base umpire in 1985, when Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's all-time record. He was the right field umpire when the ball rolled through Bill Buckner's legs in 1986. And he was the second base umpire when Barry Bonds hit home run number 715 in 2006. Ed's father, Ed Montague, played Major League Baseball for the then called Cleveland Indians for 4 seasons. He later became a scout and is the scout responsible for signing Willie Mays. Please welcome Ed Montague to the Willie Mays Preservation Society.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's great to see Mr. Horowitz, Jay.
Yes, sir.
I've been seeing you since I was a rookie. You were
Yeah.
out there, I believe. And
I
you
get
and
it.
Arthur Richmond, I mean, it was always a pleasure to go into New York to see you
Yeah.
guys.
Arthur was a good man.
Arthur was a great man. And actually, I gave Arthur the ball that went under Buckner's legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but are you still coming around? Am I going to see you out at Oracle Park?
I don't travel anymore, Ed. I just take care of the alumni people now, so don't really
Yeah.
travel much.
Okay, it was always great seeing you.
Thank
Jay.
you, Ed. Appreciate it.
Anyway, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. What a great honor. And with John Shea, John came over the house when he was writing the book, which was a thrill that we got to reminisce and go over some of the things that Willie did. And when I first met Willie back in 1958, when the Giants came to San Francisco, it was such a thrill. And I got to see Willie in so many games because I was a vendor out at Candlestick Park for 10 years. And my only regret was that he retired 2 years before I became a full-time National League umpire. Yeah.
Ed, thank you. Norm, since you introduced him, your turn, and then it's gonna be me, Steve Rothschild, then Hindi, and then I got everybody else's name down. Norm, go ahead. Norm, unmute.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Gary. Some of you have heard the story about my first game at Candlestick Park in 1962, when my father pointed to Willie Mays dancing off third base in the bottom of the first inning and said, "Watch that guy. He's the one who makes everything happen." Willie subsequently tripled to right in the third, tied the game in the eighth with a home run deep in the left field stands, and won the game in the 10th with a 2-run homer to left center. My father did not use the words five-tool player, but described Mays as someone who can hit for average and with power, was a great fielder with a strong arm, and ran the bases with unsurpassed skill. As we in the Willie Mays Preservation Society know, Willie was a 7-tool player, adding the baseball sense to instinctively know the right move to make on the field while seizing the moment. And Willie had the charisma to capture the attention of the fans, media, his teammates, and put fear into the hearts of his opponents. I saw Willie play many times throughout the 60s and early 70s. Watching Willie in batting and fielding practice, witnessing many home runs, outstanding fielding plays and throws, electrifying base running and historic moments was thrilling. I had the perfect upper deck view to witness Willie scale the fence in right center field to rob Bobby Toland of a home run, while colliding with Bobby Bonds in midair, collapsing to the ground, and maintaining his grasp on the ball, although rendered unconscious. I remember a televised game from Los Angeles in the 60s when Willie scored from first base in a routine single to right field by Frank Johnson. I met Willie in person a few times and had the privilege of hearing him speak at various Giants events. Listening to Willie speak is always a delight. You never know what he's going to say. There are times when his off-the-cuff remark may make one pause and smile at the same time. Willie always displays humor and humility with the ability to instill emotion with his humanity and poignancy. Willie and I both arrive at the ballpark early. My day is always enhanced when walking through the Field Club tunnel as Willie drives by in a golf cart with his poodle named Giant in his lap. I treasure the moment every time, feeling I was just graced by the presence of royalty, such as Willie. Starting in 1964, I went to all of the home openers in the 60s and beyond. Willie made opening day special. All of the Giants players would be introduced to the crowd in numerical order except Juan Marichal, Willie McCovey, and Willie Mays. They were introduced last. Number 27, Juan Marichal, will be introduced to a rousing ovation, followed by McCovey, whose presence brought the applause to a higher level. Then came the other Willie, Mays. The applause and roar for Mays outshined Marichal and McCovey in thunder and duration. Every year, like everyone else, I was on my feet, yelling and clapping with tears in my eyes, hoping the tribute would never end. Then Willie would seize the moment and reward the fans. Opening day 1964, home runs 407 and 408 against Warren Spahn. 1965, home run 456 against Bob Friend. 1966, home run 506 off Larry Jackson. In the photo behind me on my right, on the bottom right, I'm telling Willie how much he means to me. Much of what I said here and more. When I was done, Willie said, "Enough of the brown sugar. What do you really want from me?" We all laughed. What I really wanted was to tell him he's the greatest baseball player I've ever seen. I love him, and thank Willie for all the joy he's brought to my life. And that's my tribute to Willie Mays.
Very nice.
Very nice, Norm.
Very nice.
Before I give my quick views, we have a special guest in here, Michael Mays. Michael, do you want to say hello?
How you doing? Hello.
How are you, Mike?
How you doing, Gary? Thanks for this. This is awesome, man.
No
Hello,
problem.
Mike.
You want to say
Hey.
something to the crowd here? We got a lot of people in here.
I just want to jump on and hear some of these good stories, man.
Thank you so much
everybody
for
keeping
joining
it
us.
alive. I'm another diehard New Yorker, never gave it up. So
All right, as far as myself, I'm going to be very quick. The reason I loved Willie Mays was because of my dad. My father would talk about different Giants with all nicknames: Sal the Barbara Magley, Bobby the Flying Scott Thompson. But he only said Willie. He didn't have a nickname for him. He was just Willie, and you knew who he was talking about. My other recollections, Norm said about that Bobby Tolan shot. That was the first time I really saw him on television. It was an NBC game of the week, and it was just like Norm said, he leaped over Bobby Bonds, fell to the ground, and it was just an amazing catch. I also saw Mays in person for the first time as a kid that I really knew what was going on. First game as a Met when he homered to beat the Giants on Mother's Day, May 14th, 1972. And lastly, I've been privileged to meet Willie at all the World Series trophy tours that the Giants conducted, and also at AT&T Park when they celebrated Polo Grounds night. We got to go into the clubhouse, and sitting at the desk, Mike Murphy's desk, was none other than the greatest of all time, Willie Mays. And I kept on saying to myself, what the hell am I doing here? This is my dad's guy. But at least I was an able replacement for my dad. So I love setting this up with you guys tonight. And it is my pleasure that you're all here, and it's so appreciated. So Steve Rothschild, you're up.
Gary, there's nobody that could do what you've done the last 3 years. I mean, I don't want to keep doing that every week. I do want to take a little time, more than I usually do tonight. I showed this earlier. I just bought this from the collection of John D'Acquisto, who was a former Giant pitcher. He's now doing lithographs. You might go on his site. He's got a lot of stuff. We're all historians, and ironically, nobody mentioned that today is the birthday of not only Nolan Ryan, but also Ernie Banks and Jackie Robinson.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for Jackie Robinson, this evening probably wouldn't be happening. My few stories, I go back to 1955, like Harvey and probably a few others, luckily to be living in New York at the time that I grew up. One of those kids that was on the corner, who's better, Willie, Mickey, or the Duke? Well, 1955, I'm walking home from school for lunch, and I see my two uncles in the street with a New York Giant baseball hat and a baseball glove. Your mother said we can take you to a baseball game. Do you want to go? Well, that wasn't difficult. We took the A train from Dyckman Street down to 145th, walked up one flight, crossed over, walked down two flights, took the D one stop, 155th. They bought box seats, and they played the Braves, and he either had a double or a triple in that game, but I remember the hat flying off. And from that moment on, I was a Willie Mays fan. Fast forward a little bit, the Giants move, and that one uncle who lived in Los Angeles worked for the Don Loper shirt company. Some of you may remember they button-down shirts with a little logo here. He worked in the factory. All the teams came to him. And I get a postcard in the mail to Stephen, best wishes, Willie Mays. I wasn't a collector at that time. It was wonderful to get this, and I put it in the desk that we had in the hallway. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years later, I'm looking in the desk. My mother threw it out. You didn't need it. What do you need it for? That's the way it was. It wasn't just baseball cards. It was anything that got in the way. Okay, let's move ahead a little bit. And Michael Mays will like this story. I was a teacher, and I was the owner of a day camp from the late 70s to about 1990 in Rockland County. Wow. I was a gym teacher at the time, and it was the middle of June. And on Fridays, I had a softball team. We had games. This was a rainy Friday. And I would work after school in what was called a latchkey program. And that particular Friday, being in the gym, I had sweatpants on and I happened to have a Willie Mays shirt on for no other reason, just had a Willie Mays shirt on. The middle of the day, I get a phone call from my wife, Janice, saying that she got a call. There's somebody interested in camp. Now it's the middle of June, so it's getting close, but you never want to turn away a child. Where does she live? She lives in Riverdale. Call her back, get the address. I always had applications in my suit, my attaché case and medical forms, and tell her I'll come by after 6 o'clock. Janice calls me back. She lives in 3333 Henry Hudson Parkway, which is what's called the Whitehall. Beautiful building right over the Hudson River, which was about 4 blocks from where I lived. You would occasionally see either Willie or May driving the Pink Imperial in Riverdale. Okay, they live in 3333. I take my car, I leave school about 10 to 6, 5 to 6. It's pouring rain. I park my car, have my stuff with me, walk to the building, and I'm thinking to myself, nah, it can't be. I go to the building and the doorman is there. Can I help you? And I said, yes, my name is Steve Rothschild. I'd like to see Mrs. Hall. I'm here for seeing Mrs. Hall. Calls her up. You can go see her. She's in the penthouse. Now I knew Willie was in the penthouse. There were 5 or 6 apartments there. And I got the Willie Mays shirt on. I'm going up the elevator. The elevator door opens up. Mrs. Hall is standing by her door. And the first thing she said to me was, I see you're a Willie Mays fan. I said, I'm a big Willie Mays fan. Would you like to meet him? I said, Mrs. Hall, I'll tell you what, let's skip camp and let's meet him. She said, no, please come in, come in. So I come in, I'm speaking to the young boy, Mark Hall, and I hear her on the phone talking to Willie Mays. Okay, she fills out the application. I said, Miss Hall, you got to make sure the medical form is in before day 1. And she hands me a check. I go out. There he is, big as life.
Oh, my God.
Walk over to the apartment and shakes my hand. And we talk a few minutes. And I said, boy, you look like you could still play. And he said, no, that's all behind me now. You want a signed picture? I said, yes, I would. He goes into the room, comes out, signs an autograph picture for me, which I, of course, had laminated. It turns out he was the godfather of Mark Hall.
Oh,
I'm foaming at the mouth, don't know what to say, don't know what to do. Get back in the elevator, head back down. I say, you idiot. Why didn't you at least ask him? Maybe he would come up to camp one day. I'm sure he wouldn't, but you never know. I get home, park my car in the garage, go upstairs. Janice says, how was it? I said, Janice, I was just in bed with Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Victoria Principe. What are you talking about? I said, I was just in Willie Mays' apartment. Okay, one last piece to this. 1989, I'm at the playoffs with my son, Giants and Cubs, and it was Yom Kippur. We shouldn't be at any baseball game, that's for sure, but we were fasting. We were sitting in left field, lower stands, and I spotted Willie Mays on the first base side. I take a little business card with me, and I run around to first base. It must have been the 4th inning. And I start walking down, attempting to get his autograph. And the Giants had usherettes at the time. This lady stops me. Can I help you? Where's your ticket? I said, no. I said, I'm sitting on the other side, but I'd like to get Willie Mays' autograph. You can't come down. I said, you know what, lady? I traveled 3,000 miles. Tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to go down between, you could never do this in New York. I'm going to go down between innings. And if he doesn't sign, I'll come right back up. You can follow me. So she did. I go down, I'm screaming out his name. Willie, Willie. No answer. I did the next best thing. I yelled out, Mark Hall. He turns around like somebody takes my little card and he signs it. I go back to my seat. And at the end of the game, when the Giants, when Ryan Sandberg hit the ground ball to Thompson, Thompson throws to Will Clark out. The tears are flowing down. I'm not going to go into that. We leave, we're celebrating. We ended up going to a little shul at the Jack Tar Hotel. But on the bus, I'm sitting and there's a guy standing in front of me with a Cub uniform and he congratulates me. And I said, you know what? I shouldn't even be here. It's the biggest holiday for the Jews, Yom Kippur. He says, what are you talking about? My father's a rabbi in Sacramento. Anyway, Gary, thank you so much for the, I could go on forever, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you so much.
Steve. We're gonna go to Mrs. Mays, Hindi.
Well, I'm older than I look, and
No,
I was
you're
a
not.
big Giants fan in Brooklyn. My brother was a Giants fan. I suffered a lot in Brooklyn, but I do remember the 50s. And then they left and I became a Mets fan. So Jay, I am also a big Mets fan. In 1962, the Giants came back and it was the first year that the Mets were playing and I got this button
Nice.
I mentioned
Nice.
before. And then years later, I was in Cooperstown about 25 years ago with my husband. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is Willie,
Oh, wow.
Great shot, Hindi.
Willie and me, and he was very charming. And so I went to Cooperstown and I always got an autographed picture of him. But this time when I was there, he called me. Oh, he said, there's the button lady.
Ah,
There he is with me. I don't know if you see it.
yes. Clear as,
And here's the two of us.
nice.
So he was wonderful and the best player that ever lived and so wonderful to me. That's my story.
You know, before I turn it over to Mars, I don't know if any of you thought it was a little crazy to change the name, but for this guy, our organization needed to change its name for a few days. So that's why I did it. Mars,
So-
you're up.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Well, as I mentioned earlier to John Shea, the first book I ever got was Born to Play Ball, written by Arnold Hanno in the 50s sometime. And my pop got tickets from the company he worked for the box seats. We were sitting on the third base side, I remember, and the Giants won the game. So when it ended, this was 1955, I believe, I ran away from him and Willie Mays was running to the clubhouse and I chased him down and asked him if he would sign the book and he did. And I still have it. It's a little black book. It's falling apart. And I remember going to a baseball card convention at Moscone Center here in San Francisco just to see what somebody might offer me, but I wasn't going to sell it. They offered me $3,000 for that book and I turned them down, although I could have really used the money. Then I have to mention the last Giant Dodger game I went to on my birthday, September 8th, 1957, my 10th birthday. And Mays hit 2 triples. Duke Snyder was playing center for the Dodgers. Hank Sauer hit a 2-run homer. I believe it was in the 4th inning. So the Giants won 3-2. That's the last Giant Dodger game playing in New York in the Polo Grounds. John Shea, the last book written about Willie Mays, I thought was the best, simply because he lets Willie Mays talk. No other book does that. And Willie Mays has great stories, and he's humble, and the questions were excellent. So kudos to John Shea. And then last but not least, the movie, which Gary, you were instrumental in passing my name to Nelson George. Thank you for that. So I was invited to the premiere, the California premiere at the Castro Theater. I invited Norm to accompany me. And I was sitting down talking to Michael Mays. I was wearing a New York Giants 1951 jersey with an SF cap. We
Yep.
met Bonds, we met Cepeda, we met Michael Mays, so I was talking to some of the great former Giants, and I was talking to John Miller, and then when I got to Larry Barrett, I said, Willie Mays Field. He ignored me. So anyway, so that's my story. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bill. Mars, I'm sorry. Bill, you are up. Unmute, Bill.
Yeah,
Go-
hi. Obviously, my older brother George made me a Giants fan, and was because of Willie Mays. Because obviously, when the Giants moved, my brother was old enough, but he stayed with the Giants, and and he saw them in '62 when they came back and played at the Polo Grounds. We saw them play obviously when they played the Mets every. I think they came in twice back then, so we would go to the Met games. But anyway, when we never thought I would have lunch with him. The old Stuart Leeds New York Giants club used to have their luncheons at Fellini's in New York, and Willie Mays was speaking, and we went. We arrived a little late. Normally, the speaker would sit at the front of the table, and we were like, "Oh, we're not going to be sitting close to him, whatever." So we were sitting in the middle of the table, and I think Renee was at this meeting as well. But anyway, my brother and I are there, and all of a sudden, Willie Mays comes in, and he sits in the middle of the table right in front of us. So we're eating lunch with him. And we're talking to him about baseball, and he's talking about specific pitches and how it was just amazing to talk to. And the other thing was shaking his hand, and he had such gigantic hands. He would it was amazing. But anyway, thank you, Gary, for setting this up, and it's great to see everybody just share their love for Willie. Thanks.
I was there. I took the photographs.
Okay.
We got a new member tonight, Steve T. Welcome to the Willie Mays Preservation Society.
Thank you. My name's Steve today. I'm in the Lefty O'Doul chapter in Northern California. I live in Alameda, and I'm envious. Everybody that's spoken before me has gotten to meet Willie. I've never had the opportunity, but I'm going to talk about my first memory. I'm 8 years old, and I'm at my grandparents' house. The Giants are playing the Astros in the Astrodome. That's the only way you can watch them on TV, was when they were out of town. And Willie had a home run to center field, and it was number 511. And that was a big deal because he tied Mel Ott for the National League record. And the only people that were left at all ahead of him were Ted Williams, Jimmy Fox, and Babe Ruth. So now everybody's on the 512 watch. And Willie went on a dry spell. And it took him about 2.5 weeks. And it was like, every day, is Willie going to hit one? He will going to hit one. And one night, my brother and I were in the same bedroom, and my comes in, and he woke us up, and he said, Willie just hit his 512th. He broke his record, and it happened to be off Claude Osteen. And I never saw it until there was somebody at KMBR radio. I don't know what he was. He was a producer or something like that. I think his name's Darren Chan. And he sent it to John Miller, the broadcaster. And John Miller put it on either Instagram or Twitter. And I downloaded it. And it's Russ Hodges calling the home run. And the best part of the home run, that home run trot. And you see Willie just rounding the base, just head down. And then he shakes hands. It was probably on deck circle. But that is just a memory that stayed with me my whole life.
Wow.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much. And, you email me if you want to be added to our great list of people.
Okay, I'd love to do that. Thanks, Gary.
Wonderful.
Thank-
Ken Davidoff, you're up.
Thanks, Gary. And it's great to see everyone here and celebrate Willie. Like Gary, I'm here representing my father. My dad grew up in Brooklyn, but he was a Giants fan because of Willie. And I was born in 1971, so not old enough to see, remember seeing Willie play big league ball. But what I did see, I saw Willie playing softball. So I'm going to flip my phone. Can you see this photo?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so that's Willie. To his right is my mom, to his left is my dad, and then that's me and my little brother. That's 1978 in Staten Island. And
Wow.
What?
1978 in Staten
Oh, that's
Island.
not a regular one?
I'll wait.
A great photo.
Thank you. Thank you. 1978 in Staten Island. So Willie was friendly with my dad's boss, who owned a home in Staten Island that was later purchased by Mets reliever John Franco. That's where that photo is. And Willie was, a ringer for the company softball team. So I got to see him play on a pavement in Staten Island, and he had a double off the wire fence. I remember that. And then we got to meet Willie after that. And one little mini sequel to that was 2006. Excuse me, I was covering the very first World Baseball Classic in Arizona. And one of the exhibition games was at Scottsdale Stadium. Willie was hanging out, as he often does there. And I said, Mr. Mays, I have to introduce myself. I met you back in 1978. And he remembered my dad's boss's name. And Willie said, who was that other Italian guy? And I said, I don't know. What are you talking about? He said, yeah, there's another Italian guy who worked for that company. So I did the least professional thing I ever did in my career. Pulled out my cell phone, called my dad and said, Dad, I'm here with Willie Mays. He wants to know who the other Italian guy was, along with your boss. And my dad said, can you be more specific? Because there were many Italian guys. But my dad said, would you mind handing the phone to Willie? Could I talk to Willie for a minute? So I did, least professional thing I ever did. And my dad just thanked Willie for all of his childhood memories and for being so nice to him back in '78. So Gary, thank you for letting me share these stories. It's very meaningful to me and my family. And congratulations on all your success and happy upcoming Willie Mays Day.
Ken, thanks so much. I like that. I'll wait. It reminded me of teaching in the class. We're going to go to Russ. Go ahead. Russ Bertetta. Unmute.
I'm unmuting. Okay, thanks for having me, Gary. Just a couple of things. First of all, one of the things I found in the Giants tour office the other day is a picture that was laying around, and it's a picture of Barry and Willie. And Barry has taken a selfie of the two of them, and I think it's kind of neat with his arm around Willie and kind of holding his head a little bit there. So probably a never before seen photo, but it's pretty cool. I've just got a quick story. I saw Willie do something that rarely done in baseball. In 1960, we had our Kids Day, Redwood City Kids Day at Candlestick, August the 25th, 1960, Giants versus Reds. And Willie hit an inside the park grand slam. And it was obviously just a fabulous play. The second baseman for the Reds that day was Billy Martin. And as Willie was kind of rounding third and just putting the motor on, it seemed to me, just as an 11-year-old, that Billy Martin just kind of clutched long enough for Willie to slide in under the tag. And it was part of a 7-run inning. And he hit that off of Claude Osteen. So that's probably the most memorable game I ever saw, a moment of a game that I saw Willie. And one of the things, and there's Eddie, I taught Eddie's son at Sarah High School. Hello, Ed. Nice to see you.
Hey,
and luckily, how you doing?
Good. That was a few years ago.
Yeah, that was. But I get a few years ago, the Giants tour, we have a Christmas dinner every year, holiday dinner, and they give us a book every year for a Christmas present. And a few years ago, I had talked to our tour boss and I told him that, there's going to be this new book about Willie Mays coming out. And so that was our Christmas gift. And as a thank you, she put me sitting next to John Shea. So it was great to be able to talk with John and his book was so fabulous. But that's all I have to say. Thanks for putting this together, and we're looking forward to 2/4/24.
Thank you so much, Russ. Paul, before I go to you, two gentlemen in here who helped out immensely with this is Adam and Rick Swig. So Adam and Rick, if you want to say a few quick words, floor is yours. Or maybe you don't want to say a few words, you don't know. All right, let's go to Paul. If those two gentlemen want to speak later, just cut in on me after the end of somebody else speaking. We're going to go to Paul, then Dan, then Harvey. Paul, you're up.
Thank you, Gary, very much. My experience is very much like Gary's, although I'm a little older. So, but we both grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in a small town in Western Massachusetts called Pittsfield. It was a split town between Red Sox and Yankee fans. My father idolized Ted Williams, but for some reason, not that I disagreed with my father, although we did a lot except when it came to baseball. But, you know, in 1962, I watched the Giants in the playoffs against the Dodgers, and I was thrilled. And so in 1962, I became what I'm guessing was the only San Francisco Giants baseball fan in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And I was a kid, I'd go down. George's Variety Store was where we traded baseball cards and where we talked baseball. And my friend Bruce and I would argue who's better. For me, it was Mays. For him, it was Mickey Mantle. And that's how my love affair with Willie Mays began. But like Gary, growing up in the Northeast, you don't get baseball scores when there are no games on TV. You can't get the Giants over radio in the 1960s. So my father, who actually slept after he got home from work, but stayed up late, went to bed 1, sometimes 1:30. He would always tell me in the morning before I went to school whether the Giants won or lost and what the score was. So that brought my father and I together. I also saw that NBC game where Willie made the catch off of Bobby Tolan because we couldn't get the Giants on TV. And that was the only nationally televised game of the week where we could actually get to see our hero play and make these wonderful plays. But being close to New York, when the Mets finally came in 62 after the Giants had moved out, we had the opportunity to go down to Shea Stadium and be able to see Willie, if not watch them on Channel 9. And that was always a thrill. I was a public high school teacher for years. I moved to New Jersey. When I started making some money, I made sure that I got tickets to see the Giants, box seats for the games when they came to Shea Stadium. I also, by the way, played men's senior baseball league in New Jersey and was fortunate to do that. And every time I got a baseball jersey, guess what number I wanted? I wanted 2-4. Everybody, you know, some people wanted 2-4. There were other Giants fans, believe it or not. By then, New Jersey's a little bit more crowded than Pittsfield, Mass. But anyway, I often got my wish. I have to certainly say that without Gary in this group, I never would have met Willie. I was fortunate to come here because I had a friend and a colleague by the name of Tom Dames, who taught global studies in New York and in Woodbury, in Orange County. And I taught with Tom Dames for 28 years. And he was a diehard New York Giants fan. He was so upset when the Giants left, but Willie Mays never left his heart. And he always talked about Willie. We always talked baseball. Late at night, Tom was like an older brother figure, and we always talked about the Giants. Tom talked about the Yankees. I talked about the Red Sox as well. But having met Willie in 2014 was the highlight of my life. Now, I had seen him in 2012 when the trophy came back to New York, but I didn't get to shake his hand. And as Bill has stated, Willie's hands were huge. All I can think of when I shook them was like an old-fashioned palm baseball glove with those huge fingers. That was the hand that I was shaking. And I said, oh my God, I shook the hand of the guy who threw the ball back from Vic Wertz's catch. I mean, I was just thrilled and amazed. Willie has done so much for the community of New York, for the kids of San Francisco. I'm proud to call myself a donor. We know that Willie Mays' legacy will last far beyond his life. And so, Willie, with all the love in my heart and from the people that are here, I wish you a very happy 2/4/24. And my only regret, although there are others, but one of my chief regrets having heard tonight, I'm just upset that I never got you as a ringer on my softball team. Thank you guys very much.
Michael Mays, as you can see, your father is well loved here. Onwards. The man with the golden pipes, Mr. Dan Taylor.
Well, I'm going to deviate just a little bit, Gary, and you guys are telling great stories. This is so much fun, and great job, Gary. But I'm going to share some stories that have been shared with me by people that I know if they could be here would love to share them. And Gary, last night, and I had an exchange with the granddaughter of Chick Genovese, who was Willie's first manager in the Giants farm system. And she emailed me again this morning that unfortunately she's tied up and couldn't be here. And she really hopes to see Willie at some point in time this season, just to again reiterate how much her grandfather loves him and the reverence he spoke of Willie over the years. But George Genovese, the legendary Giant scout, was a great friend and shared some fun stories with me. In 1950, George had just been sent down to the minor leagues by the Washington Senators. And one morning he gets a phone call from Chick, who was managing at Trenton. And Chick was practically hyperventilating about this great young player his team had just received. And he was telling George, this is the greatest player I've ever seen. And, George is a little skeptical, but Chick's telling him stories about, this amazing catch Willie made against the wall and this throw that he made to get a runner trying to tag up. And Chick is telling George that, this is our center fielder. We've got our center fielder. And George says, well, have you talked to the Giants? And Chick says, yes, I called Mr. Stoneham and I told him, this is going to be a great player. And this is your center fielder of the future. And he said, Horace's response was, don't you know we've got Thompson out there? And Chick Genovese responded, well, Mr. Stoneham, you're just going to have to find another position for him because nobody's holding this young man back. And Chick Genovese had been a terrific center fielder in his own right in the Red Sox organization. He was blocked from the big leagues by Dom DiMaggio. And Chick had a lot of mustard on him when he played. He was a fast, speedy center fielder, great defense, set an American Association record for errorless games. And one of the things he liked to do was execute a basket catch, which he showed to Willie and encouraged Willie to use, and certainly became one of the great signature features of Willie Mays throughout his career. Bob Bishop was at one time a young Giants pitching prospect before he got hurt. And Bob shared a story with me in 1962. He and his brother Harry both signed with the Giants out of high school. And they were in the Los Angeles area, and they were invited to come over to the Coliseum when the Giants came to town and pitch batting practice before they went off and started their minor league careers. And they get to the Coliseum and they're walking through the visitors' clubhouse, and there's a player sitting on his stool, very buffed, very defined. He's shirtless, and Harry turns to Bob and said, "Hey, we're in the wrong clubhouse." And Bob says, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, that's got to be one of the LA Rams over there." But it was Willie Mays. Carl Bowles shared some fun stories with me, and I don't know how many of you remember Carl Bowles, but one of Carl's claims to fame was that he looked just like Willie. At least a lot of people thought so. And in 1962, Hindy, you may have been there. The Giants come back to New York, and Carl had just been called up from the minor leagues. And he comes out of the clubhouse door in center field, and suddenly a huge roar goes up from the crowd. And Carl's taken aback. And he said to me, he said, I was amazed at the New York fans. I thought, wow, is this how they welcome every rookie to the big leagues? And he comes out and he starts to jog toward the visitors' dugout. And as he's jogging across the outfield grass, that big roar kind of dies down, and it becomes a bit of a murmur. And as he's getting closer and closer to the infield, now the murmur stops, and suddenly he's being booed. And he doesn't understand what's happening. And then a couple of moments later, just as he's about to the baseline, a roar goes up again. And he looks over his shoulder, and Willie had just come out of the clubhouse. And Carl realized that when they were booing him, they had recognized that the number on his back was 1-4 and not 2-4. And not long after, the Giants were in Cincinnati, and Willie collapsed in the dugout and was hospitalized. And a day or so later, one of the wire services put out a photograph with a caption indicating that Willie was back with the team and healthy and all was well. Well, it wasn't Willie. They had been fooled as well. It was actually Carl Bowles, and Willie was still in the hospital being treated for exhaustion. The following spring, what Willie did when he realized that people felt that Carl was, were mistaking Carl for him, he told Carl that from that point on, he always had to be the first one off the bus. And the reason for that was Carl would get off the bus and the fans would swarm him. And Carl told me he would plead with the fans. I'm not Carl. I'm not Willie. I'm Carl. I'm Carl. And they wouldn't hear it. And he said it just got to be to the point where it was easier just to sign than to try to argue with the fans that he was not Willie. And guys like Bob Bishop or Arlo Engel told me they witnessed this scene, particularly in spring training in '63. And Carl would get off the bus, the fans would swarm him, and Willie would hold back, and then he would come off the bus and nobody would recognize him, and he was able to walk into the clubhouse completely unmolested and unrecognized. But also in that spring of '63, there was a female fan who would bring fresh baked goods every day to the park, and they were intended for Willie, but they didn't get to Willie. They were given instead to Carl. And one day it might be a homemade cake, the next day a pie, maybe the third day a platter of cookies, and Carl just stuck it in his locker. Well, Willie found out one day and wasn't too happy about it. And Carl told a story that Willie confronted him about it and said, "Rookie, if I ever catch you doing that again, I'll make sure you're sent so low in the minor leagues, you'll never remember that there was a big leagues." But they were great friends until Carl passed just a few years ago. And finally, one last story. George Genovese shared this with me. In 1968, the Giants drafted George Foster and Gary Maddox. And before they went off to start playing in the minor leagues, George Genovese took them to Dodger Stadium when the Giants came in, and he took them over to meet Willie Mays. And they shook hands with him, and George introduced both and said, "Willie, one of these young men one day is going to replace you in center field." And George said Willie kind of chuckled and said, "George, you say that about everybody you sign." Well, obviously, Gary Maddox was the guy that ultimately became the Giants center fielder after the trade with the Mets. But George told me that, George Genovese told me that the ride home, George Foster was just in awe at that firm handshake of Willie Mays. Said it was the strongest handshake that he had ever felt in his entire life. And I've heard that from others as well. So, Gary, this is great. Nice job. And certainly looking forward to seeing everything that's done.
That's a great story. That's a
24.
great story because I remember Carl Bowles, and when I was a vendor out there and looked exactly just like Willie, and you'd mix them up all the time. So, hello, Michael.
Hello.
Mike, I know when we're done with this, we'll send you a copy, and you'll maybe.
Yeah, he's got to hear this.
How is Dad feeling these days?
He's good. He's good, man. Thanks. You know, he's same as ever. He'll love this.
Good. Hopefully, this will put a big smile on his face.
You know,
You are up.
Can I tell you a little quick story?
Go ahead, Ed.
I went down with Mike Murphy, a couple of months ago to see Willie, and at the Via. He's down near the Palo Alto Stanford Shopping Center there, and sharp as a tack. I was there for about 2 hours, and we're just reminiscing, talking over stuff. Now he's not seeing very well and stuff like that, but I said, we're just reminiscing. And I said, Willie, I remember exactly where I was the day that you hit the 4 home runs against Milwaukee. I was at the Our Lady of Mercy Festival in Westlake, listening on my transistor radio, and right away he stopped me and said, "I should have had 5. Henry jumped up on that wall and caught that 5th home run." He remembers everything. He was sharp as a tack. It was just, it was great to be visiting with him. And I'll leave you at that.
Thank you, Ed. Harvey Weinberg.
I wrote this out when I explained to Gary that it was about 170,000 words. He threatened to pull the plug on me if I didn't cut it down. So I cut it down to 1,600. I wanted to write it out so I didn't ramble all over the place. So let me get into it. It's 1,600 unless I deviate from the script. I first saw Willie Mays play center field for the New York Giants in person at the Polo Grounds on Saturday, July 10th, 1954. I was 8 years and 10 months old. Willie was 23 and 2 months old. It was the middle game of a 3-game set against the Pirates. It was my first live baseball game. My father, my 5-year-old brother, Julie, and I were seated in the lower right field stands, general admission. We lived in the Northeast Bronx, about 6 miles from Yankee Stadium, about 8 miles from the Polo Grounds. My father parked his station wagon on the Bronx side of the Harlem River, and we walked across the McCombs Dam Bridge to the Polo Grounds. We had a great unobstructed view of Willie in center field. Don Mueller was the right fielder. Monty Irvin was the left field. But my attention was always on Willie, and let me deviate a second. My father didn't tell me to watch Willie Mays. I just was magnetized by Willie Mays. I have certain recollections of that game, which are enhanced by access to the box score and running summary of the plays posted on Baseball Reference website. I vividly recall Willie making a fine running catch in right center and whirling and throwing to home plate on a fly. A laser, when I didn't know what a laser was. Although I believed that Willie had thrown out the runner trying to score, thanks to Dan Taylor, my recollection was, let's say, adjusted or readjusted. Dan found the game story in the Daily News, which does not chronicle the throw. But I know Willie made that great catch because I remember vividly seeing Don Mueller, who moved closer to where we were sitting, backing up the catch, returning to his position, and huffing and puffing and breathing heavily from sprinting to back up Willie. My father let me use his field glasses, and I trained them on Willie standing in center field. He didn't look like he was breathing. He was calmly surveying the scene in the infield. Later that game, Willie stole home, but the official box score and the transcript says E1. We were seated among a group of African Americans, and they were exuberantly cheering for Willie. I saw Willie taking the lead off third base, clearly trying to disrupt the pitcher. One of the younger men in the group, seated towards the front of the section, rhythmically yelled, "Steal home, Willie, steal home." I saw Willie break for home and slide in safely. Willie did steal home, and the fan turned to those of us seated behind him and proudly, repeatedly exclaimed, "I told him, I told him." I don't care what the official transcript says of that one. And Norm Coleman explained why I was correct. I am pretty sure my father, who kept score in the program scorecard that he purchased, I think it was 15 cents, scored it as a steal of home. He also kept tabs on the food my younger brother was eating that day. He had to keep the 5-year-old in tow, so he kept feeding him food. Jump to June 1st, 1962.
Oh.
Willie returned to the Polo Grounds to play against the Mets. I had been working after high school at a Midtown messenger service, $1.10 an hour. I purchased 3 box seat tickets to the game from the Mets advanced ticket booth, as they used to say, at the foot of the Vanderbilt Avenue ramp. The foot of the Vanderbilt Avenue ramp. You remember that, Renee? Yeah. $3, $3.50 a ticket. I was making $1.10 an hour, remember? $3.50 a ticket. Third base, visitor side, slightly in front of the bag. My dad drove to his spot across the Harlem River, and he and my brother and I walked across the bridge to the Polo Grounds. In the 5th inning, I saw Willie Mays hit an opposite field home run. I still see it. I watched him round the bases with that familiar Willie Mays trot. No histrionics, no showboating. He did it like he would hit 660 home runs. After Willie completed his tour of the bases, a man dressed in a business attire, probably having come from the office that day, stood up and exclaimed loud enough for those in the vicinity to hear, quote, "Now I can leave. That's what I came for." According to the box score, Willie hit that home run off Roger Craig. Craig was a good pitcher, even though his record was horrid with the horrible Mets. Roger would prove to be an even better manager. Altogether now, hum baby, right?
Hum baby.
I got to put on my glasses. The Giants won that game 9-6. On July 5th, 1967, my brother Julie and I attended a weeknight game at Shea. We were seated in around section 15 or 17 of the loge. First base side with a perfect view of Willie in center field. I didn't go to see the batter. I wanted to see Willie in center field. Mike McCormick pitched a fine 6 1/3 innings using his then slow stuff. Mike got the win. Gaylord Perry throwing mostly fastballs, no jokes here, they were fastballs, went 2 2/3 for the save. 2 2/3 for the save. Of course, that was nothing when Madison Bumgarner went for a save. We know that. Willie had a rough game at the plate. Bob Shaw of the Mets pitched 9 innings. I was mesmerized, however, as I watched Willie from center field position the Giants left fielder, Jim Ray Hart. As a strong left-handed batter for the Mets, Larry Stahl came to bat in the late innings. Stahl was a pull hitter, but Gaylord was throwing heat. With each pitch, Willie signaled to Jim Ray to move closer to the left field line, foul line. From where we sat, Jim Ray's right foot was almost kissing the line. Stahl attacked one of Gaylord's fastballs and smoked an opposite field liner right to where Jim Ray was situated, in the exact spot where Willie Mays had positioned Hart. Jim Ray did not have to move except to raise his glove to catch the liner. Willie was 0 for 3 with a walk that night. The Giants won 2-1. On Friday evening, May 12th, 1972, Helen, my wife, and I, along with our friends Kevin and Jeannie Keating, went to Shea it was my treat. I bought the tickets, I paid for dinner. I'd done it at the beginning of the season. We went to see the Giants play the Mets. And I got to see Willie Mays in a Mets uniform emerge from the home dugout and wave to the crowd. He did not play that night. Kevin, who was a Phillies fan, was ready to administer CPR as he watched me stare at Willie in Mets pinstripes. That Sunday, as somebody alluded to it, May 14th, 1972, Helen and I were preparing to go to Helen's mom's house to take her to Mother's Day dinner. I watched on TV as Willie hit a home run for the Mets to defeat my Giants. I cheered. Willie played sporadically for the Mets, and usually on the weekends, announcements would be made on the radio that Willie would be starting in the starting lineup that day. Helen, a Brooklyn Dodgers fan who became an avid Mets fan, and like me, she detested the LA Dodgers. We would adjust our schedule. There were no kids in those days. Our son Brian is listening in on this, so I got to be careful what I say here. And we would drive to Shea and get walk-up tickets. One game, we were seated in the lower deck in deep right field, and I was able to observe how Willie was playing in center field, far deeper than when I first saw him on July 10th, 1954. But he was still that physically fit Willie Mays, and without any ego, positioning himself to play the position well. My father, my brother, and I attended Willie's farewell to America, to baseball, on September 25th, 1973. Willie was 42, I was 28. When the Giants were kind enough to bring the 2010 World Series trophy to New York City in January 2011, Willie was an honored member of the entourage. In advance of the reception, there was a string of emails during which one participant opined, meeting Willie would be like meeting God. No, I responded, God only wishes he could play like Willie Mays. At the 2011 reception, I captured photographs of Willie autographing the Hirsch biography, which the Giants gifted all attendees. Willie sat patiently and signed about 100 books. What I want to try to do here, somebody gave me the idea. I have the picture. Let's see if I could show you, because somebody also talked to me. See if we could see that. Can you see that? Willie signing the book?
Yeah.
I'm covering my own. There we go. How's that? What's interesting about that photo, when I when I got home and looked at what I had taken, is you could see Willie, somebody talked about his great hands, his big hands. The cover of the book has Willie, the young Willie, holding a bat, and you could see his hands in the photograph. I was next to last on the signature line, and I took the opportunity to tell Willie that I had previously read the book when it had been published about 10 months before, and that I thought he was a great American, a human being greater than just a Hall of Fame baseball player. He turned and thanked me and said, "Thank you for those kind words." When Willie turned 90, Major League Baseball produced a video montage of baseball luminaries to wish Willie happy birthday. One well-wisher was Aaron Judge, who grew up a Giants fan. Aaron, who is our 10-year-old grandson James's favorite player, informed Willie that he, Aaron, had a baseball still in his parents' home in Northern California that had been autographed by Willie. I had been gifted an autographed ball signed by Willie by my late friend Stu Weiss. That ball now resides in James's room in Pelham. James has a Willie Mays autographed baseball, just like his idol, Aaron Judge. I also gifted James my figurine of Jackie Robinson in Kansas City Monarchs uniform sliding into a base. Willie always pays respectful homage to Jackie. Our James understands the importance of Willie and Jackie. I was a very young participant in the great debate, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. I grew up in the Bronx, infested by Yankee fans. Woo. I saw all three center fielders when they were young also, here in New York. I want to enter what surely will be another debate. I acknowledge the magnificence of Shohei Ohtani. Magnificent. But Willie was a fine hitter, a brilliant base runner, a superlative fielder, a master of the entire breadth of the game. Willie managed the entire field. Willie moved players around the field like a chess master, offense, defense, and everything in between. He could have a lousy game at the plate, but he never shirked on his defense, and his teammates understood. When I was reading more than I can read now, a book I devoured was by a fine sports writer named Leonard Coppett. I'm sure some of you guys remember Leonard Coppett.
Oh, yeah.
All about baseball. It had been originally called A Thinking Man's Guide to Baseball, and then they made it politically correct, and it was A Thinking Person's Guide to Baseball, and then he finally called it All About Baseball.
I've got it.
He wrote for the New York Times, among other New York newspapers, and later in his life moved to the Bay Area and covered sports there. Mr. Coppett had a chapter comparing Willie and Mickey Mantle, but it speaks volumes for me today, even though the specific comparison is to the great Mickey Mantle. The final sentence of the final paragraph speaks more eloquently than I do, and I believe that it is relevant today as when it was first republished in 1974. I'm going to quote it and wrap it up. "Only a handful of players," Mr. Coppett wrote, "in all of baseball history have been as important to winning teams and have been able to contribute as much to eventual victory rather than statistics as has Mickey Mantle. Willie, on the other hand, I can sum up very simply, he's the best baseball player I ever saw." Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Harvey. We'll go to Barry Wolverine Cutler. Barry, you are up.
Hey, say hey, Gary, and everybody at the club. Thanks for having me on, and thanks, Gary, so much for what you've been doing over these years, ever since I joined. I want to talk about some personal stories. My parents met and married in Manhattan, and I was born there. But when I was 6 months old, they moved to New Haven, Connecticut. So I didn't grow up in Manhattan, but I inherited my father's 4 Manhattan teams: the baseball Giants, the football Giants, the Knicks, and the Rangers. So I was in a lonely place in New Haven, Connecticut. halfway between New York and Boston. And at that time, it was mostly the Yankees and the Red Sox. But I had a very special year. Well, first of all, in 1947, when I first started following sports, the Giants were in last place that year. I think they set a home run record, 254 home runs or something that year. Johnny Mize, Walker Cooper, Wilbur Marshall, but last place. And I remember saying to my father, do they ever win? And my father, he was a Bill Terry, Carl Hubble, Mel Ott guy, said, oh yeah, they win a lot. I said, will I ever get to see him win? He said, oh, you'll get to see him win, just be patient. So fast forward 4 years to 1951. Now, 1951 was a really big year in my life. First of all, in February, I had my bar mitzvah. And I got all the usual stuff. But then in May came my very special bar mitzvah gift, which has been giving me thrills all my life. And that was when Willie Mays came up to the Giants in May. And of course, there was another little event that year that made it very special. On October 3rd of 1951, with the shot heard around the world. But Willie was always very special. Every year, my father would take me to the Polo Grounds, usually around Memorial Day. They played the Phillies in doubleheaders to get a feel for what, Polo Grounds was about and the Giants were about. Well, the best visit we ever made was in 1954 on Willie Mays Day. He had just come back from 2 years in the Army. He missed 52 and 53. And we were there. It was a doubleheader, I think, against the Braves. And it was just so very exciting. But of course, that was the year they won it all. And that was the year of the big catch. And even though I lived in New Haven, we got Channel 11, WPIX. We shared it with the Yankees, but it was really great because I got to see as many games as could be on then without the regular networks and all. So it was all very personal for me. And I just followed them as much as I could. And then, of course, came 1957 and they left and they took Willie. And of course, with many others, I was very pissed off at the Giants. And I was living in a no man's land trying to follow them with the ticker tape reports coming in every night about the game that was going on out in San Francisco. And it was really a lost time. And then along came 62. And like many others, I became a Mets fan. And I said, I'd never root for the Giants again. I'd root for Willie. I'd always root for Willie. And then, fast forwarding came 2010. And somehow, when they won the World Series, and the first time since 54, it's like a fireplace that suddenly came alive. The embers in the fireplace grew into a fire. And people would say to me, how could you even root for them? I said, I can't explain it, but it's so exciting that they finally won again. And then came those breakfasts. Gary, I think it was Bill Kent that first got my attention in the other club. I heard him one night on WFAN on the overnight. I think it was with the Schmoozer, talking about he was president of this Nostalgia Society. And I called him up. And so I went to, kept in touch with them and met Gary and others from this club along the way because you were doing such a great job. And I went to all those breakfasts. And of course, that first breakfast, they opened the door and in came Willie Mays. And I never thought that I'd see a bunch of 70 and 80-year-old guys standing there in tears as Willie made his entrance. But there we were, a whole bunch of us from all over the place. It was that year, I believe, that I shook his hand for the first time when he signed his autobiography. That wasn't written by Mr. Shea, but on the other hand, he autographed it. And we were told, you know, I wanted to get a count of how many were coming, and you're all going to get a book autographed by Willie Mays. Well, I had already bought the book, so I schlepped the book in. I live in a small town in New Jersey now since 1970, 53 years, called East Windsor. It's near Princeton and it's near Trenton. And I often pass the site of where Willie played for the Trenton Giants, which very long ago became a shopping center. But all of these things, it all seemed to touch me someplace along the line. So when I went to all those 3 breakfasts, it was unbelievable. But nothing was the same as the one when Willie signed the book. And I got to shake those gigantic hands that you've all been talking about. And I really felt like I arrived someplace. And this was just, you know, from afar, because it was difficult to be in New York. And I was either in Connecticut or, as Gary pointed out at the beginning, I spent 4.5 wonderful years in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And a couple of weeks ago was another high for me because I waited 68 years to see them actually win a championship. But along the way, and this was in 2015, and it was really right after the 2014 World Series, in early 2015, being where I live, I went to this very large dealer to look at a Subaru with my wife. And we went up into the showroom, and a salesman comes up to me and he says, hi, my name is Mays. And so, being rather a smart ass myself, I said, yeah, my name is DiMaggio. And he said, no, my name is really Mays. I said, yeah, how do you come to the name Mays? He said, my father is Willie Mays' brother. And he moved to Philadelphia. I hope, Mike, you're listening to this. I don't know how true it is, but my father moved to Philadelphia as a young man. And I was born in Philadelphia. And my name is Isaiah Mays. And we chatted, and every time we email, talk on the phone, see each other, it was always for me, say hey. And he learned to say hey back. And it was so funny because he was even built like Willie. He's about 5'10", African-American with a winning smile, you know, and he must be in the family. But in any event, I ended up buying a couple of Subarus for him over the next couple of years. And I'm still driving a Subaru. But these are just some of my remembrances, because I know so many of you have talked about seeing Willie so many times. I saw him as much as I ever could. I saw him in all those all-star games on television, where he always seemed to find a way to help the National League win, whether it was his hitting, his running, his throwing, whatever. And just like everybody else, it's no argument. Babe Ruth is always considered #1 in baseball because he saved baseball after the famous Black Sox scandals. But the greatest player on the field, all time, there's only one, and that's the say hey kid, Willie Mays.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you all. Say hey, you all. Thank you, Gary. Keep it up. I hope to be on more often.
Wonderful. We're gonna go to Jeremy and Dennis Lip.
I just want to get in one sentence.
Go ahead, Frank.
DiMaggio and Mays mean the same thing in Italian and English. Of May.
Thank you, Frank. Jeremy and Dennis Lip, you are up.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, like Gary says about his dad and Ken Davidoff about his, many things I thank my dad for, but chief among them is making me a Giants fan. And like somebody else said, I don't even remember him specifically saying, look at Willie Mays, but it just was inevitable. There's so many memories. There's one game that I remember in 1961. The Giants were in San Francisco. The Mets hadn't been born yet. They were going to be born the next year. They arranged a game between an exhibition game in Yankee Stadium between the Yankees and the Giants. So because people were starving, it's been 3.5 years that Willie Mays was gone. And I remember my grandfather had just died, and we drove down from a bungalow colony in Monticello. And it was an all-day driving, horrible rainstorm. And Alvin Dark, who was managing the Giants, said, "We'll never play this game today." And somebody looked at it and said, "You look at this crowd and see they're not leaving." And because of Willie Mays, they had to cancel the home run contest between Mays and Cepeda and McCovey and Mantle and Maris and Moose Gowan. But they could not help but play the game. And I've been to political conventions, to rock concerts, to other baseball games. I've seen Dwight Gooden pitch when the crowd was amazing. Dwight Gooden actually came to my 70th birthday party a few years ago. But the roar that night for Willie Mays, I can still hear it. Not when he came up to bat, but for the moment he walked out of the dugout into the field. It was just a constant. I remember that curmudgeon Henry Morgan, who used to be on What's My Line, was sitting next to us. And all of us were in tears, and the whole night, and I don't think it ever stopped raining. I don't remember if they played the whole game or not, but he created the crowd and the reason for being there. You talked about the All-Star games. I think it was 67 or 69, where there were maybe 9 or 10 future Hall of Famers. Yet with the Hall of Famers, he stood out head and shoulders. And it's why Ted Williams once said they created the All-Star game for Willie Mays. And Ray Sadecki, who was a pitcher for the Giants and then came to the Mets when Willie came to the Mets in 72, said, no, they invented baseball for Willie Mays. But I actually believe that Willie Mays invented baseball, because there were things that Abner Doubleday or whoever invented baseball could never have imagined that this man did on a baseball field. And I'll use my usual hyperbole. If you want to remember Willie Mays forever, long after he and all of us are gone, they should name the 3 major sports in this country: football, basketball, and Willie Mays.
Love it.
I'm using a couple of hyperbolic lines. If you remember the crazy, eccentric, alcoholic Tallulah Bankhead said there were only 2 geniuses in this world ever. One was Willie Shakespeare, and the other was Willie Mays. Right.
Thank you, Dennis.
It just, my whole life has revolved around this man. I'm a regular poker player, and everybody knows I play with the same people. When the flop comes out 2-4 something, everybody yells out, "Say hey." I've trained everybody. So, and I just have to thank Gary one more time for inviting me in 2015 to the Willie World Series tour. And the fact that I was able to shake this man's hand is one of the greatest experiences of my life. Thank you. Thank Gary.
Thank you so much. Adam Swig, you are up. Then we'll go to Neil.
Thank you.
Hey Gary, how you doing? How's everybody?
Good. How are you?
Man, I am working hard today. I just sent a press release to 3 different PR people because the Giants, I love the Giants, but I don't think they were doing enough for our guys. So I got 24 restaurants and businesses to offer Say Hey specials on Sunday in San Francisco to do Willie Mays, just tributes to Willie Mays. Tony's Pizza is doing a pizza. You got to hear about this one. This one is cool. He goes, Tony says, Willie's been his inspiration. Tony's a world-renowned pizziola here. He's won all the awards. And he made a Say Hey Sicilian pizza, which is going to be a pizza with Sicilian pizza with a premium slice with fried chicken cutlets, house-made spicy link sausage, fresh mozzarella, vodka sauce, and topped with oregano, pecorino, garlic oil, parsley, and mashed sweet potato, which is orange, paying homage to the San Francisco Giants. So everyone's having fun with this. They're making Say Hey cocktails, and It's going to be a fun day. They're going to pull out cable car number 24, which was named after Willie. And they're going to ring the bell 24 times. So there's going to be some fun things. They're going to light up a bunch of spots and restaurants orange for Willie on Sunday. And yeah, I'm just trying to get as much love for the guy as possible because he deserves it. And while I have the time, there's someone else I want to show love here. He had his birthday on Monday. And if we could all sing happy birthday to him, I would love this. His name is Michael Mays.
Excuse me, but my birthday brother is Adam Swig, whose birthday is January 29th. So I think everyone should definitely sing happy birthday to Adam.
We have the same birthday, guys. How funny is
Great.
that?
Great.
And Willie's
birthday.
been like my godfather in my life. And the day that me and Michael found out we had the same birthday, that was just, that was crazy. That was crazy. We said, come on. And so feel free to sing to Michael because I want to.
Gary, you want to do it?
Can we do it? Can we unmute? Ready?
We once sang it to Willie himself, you know.
There you go.
Happy birthday
Birthday
to
to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
Birthday to both of you. Happy birthday to you.
There's some singers.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And you know, I know the Giants are sending out a press release tomorrow. I got the restaurant community sending out one. I got the San Francisco Transit Authority sending out one. So they're going to be talking about Willie Mays Day somewhere, someday, for all time. And thank you to John Shea also for plugging this group and my little idea. So thank you, Gary, so much. Thanks for having me.
You are so
I'm gonna bring Pepto-Bismol to Tony's.
Adam and Michael. Way to go, Adam. Adam and
Thanks,
Michael.
guys. We do it for Willie. It's all for Willie. Got to keep it going. John's Grill. They're gonna do a $2.40 fried chicken sandwich for lunch. That was a fun one.
Right.
So we got a lot of places. Skoma's is doing a $24 deal sandwich and a glass of wine. So there's a whole list. I can I'll put it in the chat. You guys can see it. I'll put it in the chat.
Sounds good. Neil, you are up.
Thank you. This is such an incredible night. I get to wear my jersey and everything. I'll be very brief because I want to hear everyone else's stories. And I know we're going to be meeting later in future so we can talk more. But I want to, and I won't go into the details, but I once spent 4 hours with him in a green room, which was amazing. We were waiting for him to get an award. I'll tell you about that some other time. I really want to talk about the emotional attachment I and my brother and my whole family have. We were born in Brooklyn, but we were Giant fans because my father was born in the Bronx and rooted for the Giants. A couple of things. Very few people think about Willie Mays as a civil rights activist. And he was pretty apolitical in general. He was a businessman. I'll get into that. No, I won't. But his reaction to when he was discriminated against when they first moved to San Francisco, I don't know if people remember this, but he bought a house, or his wife bought a house, and it was in a white neighborhood, and the people were disgusting. He was so cool about it. And of course, Jackie Robinson gets a lot of credit for his aggressive role in civil rights, but Mays's role in civil rights was, I believe, equally important. Of course, I'm biased. The other thing about him, when he spoke about race relations, which did not happen often, he just talked so plainly. You all must remember that Alvin Dark was a pretty bad racist. And many people say that the Giants, who had the best teams in the 60s, never won in the 60s because of all that racial stuff. And Dark was quoted, and he never pulled it back, that Blacks and Latinos could never manage. They're not smart enough. And the next day, of course, they went to Willie Mays and asked him what he thought. And all he said was, You know, people who talk that way very often think that way. And I just thought the way he handled the issue was a model for us all, raise, white, green, or whatever. A couple of other things. I have to agree with everyone. I love Willie Mays because he made my father happy. And my brother and I loved my dad. He was a great dad. Won't go into all of that. But this evening has brought him back to life, which is quite wonderful. Last thing I'll say is that he stayed in shape his entire career. I don't know exactly how many years he played, 24, 25, but as we know from the time he got exhausted and needed a rest, he put everything into it for 20, 25 years, and he just stayed in shape. The food he ate, he never drank, never smoked, of course. And he lived a life. He had his troubles with his marriages, but he just lived an exemplary life, and he has this hold on us that will never let go. And even though my kids never saw him play, they have the same feelings. And there's a lot more I could say. Next time we meet, I'll go into the conversations I had with him at that green room, which were fascinating. He talked about Drysdale, he talked about Minnie Minosa, and of course he talked about Barry Bonds. But I won't get into all that because this is Willie Mays' night and I'm enjoying it. I will say it's a mitzvah. Thank you, Gary, and thank you all for pulling us together.
Thank you, Neil. Just so everybody knows, this May, when Willie's birthday comes, the whole month of Zooms will be dedicated to Willie Mays. So bring all your stories back. Dr. Lift, Jeremy, I don't know if you wanted to talk, if we cut you off. I guess he's not there. So Larry, you are up. Larry Simi.
Thank you very much, Gary. And I want to thank Adam and John Shea and Gary for all they've done to make this 2424 thing. It's just incredibly innovative, and I think just really just a special way to honor such an incredibly great man. And I wanted to mention to Dan that, you know, he told some great Carl Bowles story, but the one that I heard was that coming back from LA in 1962, the Giants bus coming from the plane, they landed the plane and took it to kind of a far corner of the airfield, and then unloaded the players into a bus. And then as they started driving back towards the terminal, the fans had just basically, you know, got all over the field, the airfield, and they were literally, you know, in fear of their lives because the fans were just coming up on the bus and the bus was shaking. And I think it was Gaylord Perry that said, well, hey, let's just send Bowles out there. He looks like Mays, and then we'll be rid of all these guys and we can go on. But yeah, I did want to just say, most of you guys had talked about, you know, this incredible ball player, you know, and from 58 to that horrible day in 1972, I probably saw 75 games at Seal Stadium and Candlestick, and got to watch the 12 games or so a year they televised from Dodgers Stadium. And I just saw, you know, throws, catches, unbelievable base running and power hitting. But the two things that really stuck out with me were two words, or three, I guess: clutch and baseball IQ. This guy, when the bread was on the table, man, he would pick it up, you know, 90% of the time. He would get that hit, whatever it was. And then the baseball IQ in terms of, you know, that somebody described his positioning at Jim Ray Hart, and, you know, knowing just where to throw, knowing how fast a ball player was and whether he could throw him out or not, knowing when he could run, you know, the legendary scoring from first base, you know, happened on more than one occasion. And so much of that was, it was speed and athletic ability, but it was baseball IQ as well. But I'm not going to talk about that. I think a couple of meetings back, I talked about, when Willie lived for a couple of seasons in our neighborhood and, how always so patient. We'd ring the doorbell. He or Leon Wagner, Willie Kirkland, his roommate, would always be really nice to us. And Willie, literally, I was never so lucky, but a couple of my buddies actually got rides home from Candlestick with him. But I want to talk about an afternoon. I think I was in high school. Yeah, I must have been in high school sometime. And I was playing golf at Harding Park in San Francisco. And for those of you who are New Yorkers, Harding is a jewel of it's one of the top public courses in the country. And in fact, it's such a great golf course that they played the PGA there, I think, one of the pandemic years. And we were, and I forget, it's been reconfigured, it's 50 plus years since this happened, but we had just finished a fairly short par 4, and we were waiting in the tee box for the fairway to clear on the next hole. And the hole we just finished was, I don't know, probably 360 or so yards. And as we're sitting there waiting, all of a sudden, in that voice that Eddie Montague so beautifully imitated a few minutes ago, we hear that very high pitch 4, and we're looking around, and here comes this ball. It had to have been banged, 325, 330 yards with those old 1960s clubs, not these, aluminum things that whip like crazy, that these big pro hitters. And here it comes, and this guy starts walking down, and all of a sudden we said, "Oh, holy crap, that's him!" And he's wearing this red sweater, and he comes down, and, "Hey boys, I'm really sorry, that one kind of got away from me." And it was just the most amazing thing. Here is, the man himself, and we're just dumbstruck. We didn't know what to say. We're teenage kids. It was just one of the most incredible things, but it kind of goes to what John Shea pointed out in his biography, and other biographers have. What an extraordinary athlete this guy was. I know he was a great high school quarterback and he was a basketball player, but I've never seen a guy, and I've been to plenty of pro tournaments, but boy, he tagged that ball like you wouldn't believe. It was just really something. But it was one of several and very special interactions I had, just, being fortunate enough to grow up in San Francisco and come across this great man a few times. And then, of course, having the pleasure of watching the greatest baseball player in the world play his sport. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Larry. Dr. Liff, I think you might have been passed by.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Please call me Jeremy, first of all. Thank you.
Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'll keep it very brief. I was born in 1980, so I didn't come anywhere close to seeing Willie play in person, but I'm a diehard Mets fan from the time that I can remember anything. But I also, from the time I can remember anything, remember Willie from my father, who coincidentally was born on January 10th, which is Willie McCovey's birthday, and his brother was born on May 6th, which so I don't really know how that turned out well, but somehow that turned out. I would just want to say the two things. One, the stories of children of KKK members in the 60s wanting to be Willie Mays in The Sandlot is unbelievably powerful. And I forgot who had mentioned his impact on civil rights and all of that. That is just an unbelievably emotional and psychological powerful impact he had on our society, has to have been in the 60s. And my favorite Willie Mays baseball story, which Fran Healy has told a few times, is Willie was on first. He went from first to third on a base hit to center field. They appealed and thought that he had missed second. The pitcher took the ball, stepped off the rubber, turned, lobbed the ball to second base for the appeal play. He did not miss second. Of course, he was safe. And while he did that, Willie's still home. So I think that pretty much sums Willie's baseball genius up. One of those things where not only it's not a matter of other players not being able to do it, they wouldn't have even imagined trying. And I think that's, as someone who was born 7 years after he retired, all the things I see them in my mind only, but that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Mr. Mattis, you were up. Howard, unmute. There you
Yep, I'm unmuted. This has been a very interesting evening. I will keep it brief because I don't know what else I could really add to the discussion. Plus, it's starting to get a little bit late here in the East Coast, and I got things to do tonight. But I have enjoyed everybody's memories of Willie. I was very fortunate to have grown up in New York City, and I got to see Willie play every single year from 1962 to 1973, at least once a year when the Giants came to the Polo Grounds to play the Mets. And then when they came to Shea, right up until the time that Willie joined the Mets. And I believe I saw one game shortly before he got hurt in the summer of 73. But I did see him every year from 62 to 73 in person. Also in those days, as many as you might remember and should remember, the Giants came to New York 3 times a year to play the Mets. That was before all this crazy expansion and the cockamamie schedule they have now where all teams play each other. It's absurd. But the Giants played about 9 games, as did the Dodgers, against the Mets. So I had plenty of chances to see Willie. Probably the most memorable one was when he hit the 17th home run in the month of August in 1965, which broke the National League record for most home runs in a calendar year or in a season. And that record has since been broken. So I saw Willie, I don't know how many times, 30 some odd times, 35 times during the San Francisco and then the Met part of his career. I did meet him once in a memorabilia show in the 90s, and I did get his autograph. I don't know if it's visible or not, but I did get it, and I did shake those hands. But to be honest with you, I don't remember the hands. Maybe I'd remember Will Chamberlain's if I shook his. Willie's I don't remember, but I was very happy to meet him in person and get the ball. Just a couple of shout outs before I call the night here with you guys. My son last year, he knows I'm a Giant fan and a Willie Mays fan. My son's 28. We're Met season ticket holders. He bought me a nice Father's Day gift because he knew how much I loved Willie Mays. This is the gift he got me. The 1951 New York Giants yearbook, an original yearbook. Unfortunately, Willie's name is not mentioned once in the book because this came out early in the season and Willie was still in the minors. So his heart was in the right place, but there's no Willie Mays in the book. But I think I'll keep it anyway. It's still got it wrapped. I have taken it out of the wrapping, and it's so interesting to see the pictures and the bios of the early guys, including people that we've heard about over the past couple of weeks and months. I want to 2 quick shout outs if they're listening still, if they're still on. One is to Jay Horowitz. Jay, I'm a partial season ticket holder. Been a Met fan since 62. I hope this year is better than last. But I'm grateful that my season tickets are in left field, where I get to see number 24 hanging up there every game I go to. So I always think of Willie. So thank for your efforts to get 24. I do remember Mrs. Payson and the promises, and I kind of gave up on it. But whenever I see the replay, Channel 9 or SNY plays the replay, there's always one guy they show over and over from the original tape of Old Timers Day, and when they announced it, and one guy is with tears in his eyes, and I didn't cry, but that's how I eventually I felt seeing Willie's number 24. The other shout out goes to John Shea. Mr. Shea, I hope you read your emails every day because I wrote you a nice long email yesterday complimenting you on the article you wrote and the information about Willie Mays Day. The Appreciation Day coming up. So I knew I had to say something to him, and I did not dream that I would actually see your picture here tonight, right after writing this email. So I hope you got it. I hope you read it. It was full of compliments, and everyone was from the heart. So thank you very much, Mr. Shea, for the article. Jay, thank you for being with the Mets so long, and thank everybody here for their memories. Gary, of course, you're the ringmaster. I guess this was a circus. I guess I don't know what else to call you. You put all this together, and you've done a great job. And again, thanks to my well-meaning son, who, by the way, is the one who got me season tickets last year for my 70th birthday. Willie's not mentioned. One more thing. This is a book that some of you may have heard of and might have read. It's an older book about the 62 pennant chase. Excellent book. One of the best books I've read. It's centered on the Dodgers and the Giants at 62. A little bit of Willie trivia. We all know, every one of us knows, although otherwise we wouldn't be Met fans or Mays fans, excuse me, that Willie was on deck when Thompson hit the shot heard around the world. And how many of you remember that Willie made the last out, caught the last out of the 62 playoffs against the Dodgers in center field. I was watching it on TV, caught it. I don't remember if it was basket or not. It must have been basket, but he picked up the ball and just slammed it into right field. So Willie was kind of involved in the final play of both 51 and 62, both victories against the hated Dodgers, who I absolutely despise. So thanks again for everybody's memories tonight.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you next week.
Will Knox, you are up. Will.
Thank you, by the way, Howard.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much, Gary, for all this, and certainly Adam for organizing it, and Michael Mays. I have been wanting to see you in person, and here we are finally. It's been many, many, many years since you and I, as contemporaries, have not necessarily crossed paths, but I'm happy to share this evening with you, Michael. Your dad changed my entire life in 1961. It happened on a Friday night when I went to his apartment on Spruce Street in San Francisco, where I was growing up. It was 4 blocks from my home. I had my friend Bobby with me because he was spending the night. In those days, it wasn't called a sleepover. So I said, hey, Bobby, let's go see if we can get Willie Mays' autograph. He's 4 blocks away. Bobby demurred to me. I'm 10 years old. And we headed up to Spruce Street and we ring the doorbell of his place because I found out where he lived. And I ring the doorbell and Marguerite answers the doorbell. And from the top of the stairs, the door opens up. Willie's not home. If you want an autograph, come on back tomorrow. So that's what I did. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Bobby and I set ourselves down. And at 9:30 in the morning, out comes Willie Mays towards his solid green 1961 Cadillac convertible. Nobody had a convertible in San Francisco in those days. Willie, can we get your autograph? Okay. Hey, Willie, we've got tickets to the game today. How about taking us to the game? Willie says, okay, hop in. So we hop in his 1961 Cadillac and we start going towards Candlestick. And a block away, I go, oh my gosh, the tickets, Bobby, we have the tickets at your house. Willie says, where do you live? Well, Bobby lives 5 blocks the other way. Willie turns the car, pulls into Bobby's driveway. We run into the house. We get the 2 tickets. We come out to the car. Willie's waiting for us. Willie Mays is waiting for us. We hop in the car. We start out. 2 blocks later, I go, oh my gosh, Willie, I forgot. My mom made sandwiches for us. And if I don't go back to my house, she's going to wonder what happened. Where do you live? He says. Well, I live 5 blocks the other way. Willie's cornered. He cruises down Jordan Avenue where I lived. He parks the car in front. I jump out of the car. I run in the house. Mom, Willie Mays is outside. I grab the sandwiches, the bags. I run into the car, and all I can see to this day is my mother in the picture window looking out and wondering, my God, these 2 little kids just got into some guy's green Cadillac and she doesn't know what the hell's going on. We go to the ballpark. He parks at the players' entrance. He says, you meet me here after the game and I'll take you guys home. Holy crap. So we're high as a kite. It's 1961. It's Candlestick. We happen to have tickets behind the dugout because my aunt had season tickets and my brother's there with his good friend, and my brother's 13 and I'm 10. And I'm cool because I just got a ride to the ballpark with Willie Mays. My brother can't believe it. You guys can't believe it? Well, if you want, maybe you should come back with me and Bobby
to the players entrance and you'll see me get a ride home with Willie, and maybe he'll take you too. After the game, we all strut back there. My brother can't believe what's going on. He thinks it's full of BS. Willie's absolutely just swarmed by kids. And he says, he points and he says, get in the front seat. So I then say to my brother and his friend, you guys get in the back seat. He'll never know you're there. Just really hang low, stay low. He won't know you're there. So they crawl into the back seat. Willie and Billy, that's my name at the time, I'm Will now, but Willie and Billy and Bobby are in the front seat. Out we go through the players' entrance. He's hopping in the car. He drives through. He starts out. He's right in the middle of the parking lot. He turns around and he goes, who the hell's this? He turns around. He sees these two kids in the back seat. Willie, those are my brothers. You don't mind taking them home too? I mean, we're all in the same place. He's cornered by this 10-year-old. So he drives us back, I think to this day, to my home. We get out. That was the end of that. 2 weeks later, my good friend Whitey, who had blonde hair, no offense, is spending the night at my house because the next day we're going to the ballpark to go watch the Giants. I say to my buddy Whitey, hey, maybe Willie will take us to the ball game because he took me 2 weeks ago to the ball game. So maybe he'll take you to. Whitey doesn't believe any of it. He says, you're full of crap. I said, well, let's go tomorrow morning and we'll park ourselves outside Willie's house and I'll show you. We go to Willie's house on Spruce Street, his apartment. We park ourselves. Willie comes out of the apartment. He takes one look at me and he says, get in the car. Twice he took me to the ballpark. And to this day, we've never really met since, although I did write an essay about this incident that I tried to get into Sports Illustrated and I tried to get into the New Yorker, and Roger Angel wrote me a beautiful letter back and said, if you ever run into Willie Mays, tell him that I really admired that time he threw out so-and-so at home plate in 1954, blah, 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 blah. Well, Willie and I have never crossed paths since. However, my story got to Willie, and it was then subsequently put in Jim Hirsch's book on page 378. You can see it for yourself, immortalized, the Willie and Billy story. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I'll tell you, it taught me more than anything else at 10 years old, that if you don't ask, you don't get. And thank you.
I read that. I read that in the book. I knew it was familiar.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Will, quick thing. I grew up on Jordan Avenue myself in the 70s.
Okay, there you go. My mom lived there till 10 years ago.
I now live on Palm, which is one block over.
85 Jordan. I went to junior high school at Roosevelt, and I went to grammar school at Madison.
I grew up at 127. I went to Geary School and Argonne before that, and then Presidio.
Michael Mays, please give my heartfelt thanks to your father and send him my love.
Hey man, thank you for that. That was a top 10.
Mr. O'Doul, you're up.
Unmute myself here. Hello, everybody. Hi, Gary. Good to see you. Michael Mays, it's really an honor to meet with you. Your father and my cousin have something in common. They're both baseball ambassadors. You know, O'Doul in Japan and Mays in the U.S. Good to see the rest of you guys too. John Shea, Eddie Montague, Charles. Good to see you too, buddy. I have a couple of stories really quick. I first saw Mays on television because I'm a San Francisco boy. He was playing for the Giants in New York. And I go to my dad, I go, that guy's a heck of a ball player. He's, yeah, someday we'll get to see him play. And I said, yeah, right. We never get out of the Bay Area. Well, in 1958, the Giants show up in San Francisco. And I said, whoa, I'm going to get to see Willie Mays play in San Francisco. Opening day, April 15th, 1958. My dad says to Tommy, we're going to go see Willie Mays. I looked at my dad and I go, Dad, it's a school day. He's not for you, it's not. So I had flu that day. I had baseball flu. Missed the one day in high school that I missed. And I went to see Willie Mays play. He didn't do anything that day. Cepeda hit 2 home runs, but really didn't do anything. But I got to see him play. Since then, I've seen him play at Candlestick several times. I can't count them on my hand. But I never met the man. They're at Oracle Park. Giants are playing. I have a season ticket. I retired. I got season tickets. I'm going every game. So my seat's in the left field area. So I go in the 2nd Street gate, usually take the ramp up. It's in the lower deck. So I didn't have to climb a lot of stairs. I walk in one day and I see golf carts sitting by the elevators. Who rides in a golf cart? 2 ball players, Mays, McCovey. I look in the elevator. Here's Willie Mays with the dog and his aide. And I'm going, heck with the ramp. I'm taking the elevator. I went over. I wait for the elevator. I introduced myself. My name is O'Doul. He's all like Lefty. We let it go right there. I get in the elevator with Mays, the dog, his aide. I'm only going up 1 flight, but I'll go all the way to the Oracle suite level. We're number 59. Why has he got suite 59? He should have suite 24. Anyway,
The year I was born.
introduced myself. We were going up in the elevator and I go, I became a fan of yours in 1951 when you signed with the Giants. And I go, I'll never forget that. And he looked at me and he said, in his little voice, 51, you old. I was 9, Mr. Mays, but it was an honor to meet him, shook his hand, and there's a big hand it is. So that's my story about, I finally get to meet Willie Mays, saw him play, and in my book, he's the best ball player ever. Thank you. That's my story.
Thank you, Tom. Ken, you're up. Ken Hogarty.
Good evening, everybody. When the Giants came to San Francisco, I was a Yankee fan. I had been a Yankee fan for years. My dad had played semi-pro baseball against DiMaggio. A lot of NorCal people went on to play for the Yankees, and it just seemed that way. So in a sense, I was prepared not to like Willie Mays. I don't know how that could be now in retrospect, but the first year or so, with Cepeda and Marichal and Felipe Alou and all the newbies, it was just really exciting and things, but it didn't take me long to realize who the best of them all was. And I do remember 3 specific things. I remember a game in 1959. I'd walk down to Seal Stadium from my home, which is a block off Castro Street down to Seal Stadium. And it was the day after McCovey's debut when he had gone 4 and just brought everybody all this great promise and everything like that. And it was an interesting game. I remember 2 or 3 things about it. I remember that Cepeda played third base and he looked like a butcher, complete butcher. So that experiment wasn't going to last long, although left field wasn't that much better. But I also remember that before McCovey came up, I think it was like the 5th or 6th inning. And in my memory, it was Harvey Haddock's pitching, but they intentionally walked Mays to get to McCovey. And I thought, this guy went 4 for 4 yesterday, had 2 triples, and they walked Mays. And like I said, I was coming around to the fact that I'm watching the greatest of all time, and that helped cement that reputation. I do remember that at the time, the only games televised were the Dodger games. There were 11 games televised from LA. And besides trying to get Sacramento stations hanging an antenna out the window and things like that, which didn't usually go too well, but for the games of the week on Saturday. But the 11 Dodger games, I really grew to hate Don Drysdale. It became very visceral. And to this day, in fact, last year or 2, I was writing a chapter for the Candlestick book for James Ford, who'll be on in a couple of weeks, about the Marichal Roseboro game where I was at. And to my mind, I still blame that one on Drysdale, because even though Koufax was pitching, I think it was all the times that Drysdale had decked Mays, and I just had a complete hatred for him. In fact, at the time, I had a teacher at Sacred Heart who was Dick Perkins, who was in a movie called Experiment in Terror. He was an extra, and he showed us the outtakes of it and things like that. And they featured Don Drysdale in the movie, the real Don Drysdale. And to me, I always thought Experiment in Terror, how perfect. Don Drysdale throwing at Willie Mays. And like I say, I still writing the story a year or 2 or a year or two ago, I still have that visceral hate of Drysdale because of what he did to Willie and things like that. But I guess the memory that really holds true is I'd gone to the 6th game of the World Series. My dad had taken me out of school after about 3 days of a rain delay, writing the notes every day. Finally got to go to the 6th game. Giants won. And of course, I thought 7th game would be a snap. There's no way we're going to lose and things like that. And I still remember in a biology class at the end of the day, we're in there gathered around about 80 people and watching the game on little television and everything like that. And of course, the famous play where McCovey hits the ball. But before that, on a ball hit down the right field line, to this day, I'm convinced that Willie would have scored if he had gotten the go sign. And, you know, it's like there was the World Series victory that I was so yearning for even then. And it wasn't until 2010, when I was principal of Sacred Heart Cathedral, my high school, that I got to let 1,300 kids go to watch the victory parade, that I finally felt some sort of vindication. Because to that day, I was convinced 62 should have been the winner. If Willie Mays had been given the go sign, he would have scored, and somehow we would have won that game. So that's my story. I love the man. Like I say, it was kind of interesting because very parochial. I wanted to like all the new Giants, but it didn't take long to realize I was watching the greatest of them all.
Ken, you're a great principal. Way to go. Kim Rupert, you are up.
Thanks a lot, you guys. This is just fantastic. All of your stories are great. I don't have really very many. I grew up super privileged, and I realized it when, you know, I was just a young kid that, whew, I got to see Willie Mays play a lot after we first moved up to San Francisco. I see baseball as a form of art, and in that respect, you know, Willie is Da Vinci, Shakespeare, Beethoven, Nureyev. You know, he's just a master of baseball, and to get to have watched him day in, day out, do the things he did that were just unbelievable and really had not been done before. So it's such an honor. My big regret is my grandfather didn't think, you know, being around baseball and baseball players was a thing for girls. So I never got to do the things my brother or my cousin did. But Willie, Mr. Mays, I'd always call him, was just always super nice whenever I was around him. But I was scared to death because to me, I was in the presence of God. And I was just completely in awe of being around this man that I really, again, I thought he was God. So I started playing baseball in a men's fantasy ball league. And I was telling Gary that I chose my number 23 because it's sacrilegious to wear number 24. You know, only Willie can wear number 24. I also wear number 4 because that's pretty close to 24, but it's also Melot, who was my mother's favorite player, and the Duke. So anyway, that's all I've got. But I just, you know, I echo everybody just thinking that Willie is the best ever, and he'll never be surpassed. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Kim. Ed Freer, you are up.
Well, thank you, Gary. And these are just wonderful stories, and mine will be quick. The first game, of course, was 1954, doubleheader with the Pirates, and I was a Giant fan ever after that. But I want to just speak of a game I went to in 1964, which I consider a transition of old baseball to new baseball. As an example, Casey Stengel, talking about old baseball, was manager of the Mets. Now, at that time, there was no limit on extra innings. There was no designated hitters. There definitely was no instant replay. But the Mets and the Giants played a doubleheader, Memorial Day, 1964. And the second game went 23 innings. And what I remember about that day is it went on and on. Willie Mays came in and played shortstop for a short time. And I can remember the exuberance Willie had, kind of bouncing from one foot to the left foot to the right foot, catch a ground ball if it was ever hit to him. And I just think you could see the enthusiasm of the man even at that time. So that's my story, and I think Willie is a treasure to all of us. I could tell more about the game, but that's enough for now.
The Aloos played the outfield.
Thank you,
He
Ed.
played the outfield, but they pulled him in for a second because there was limited players.
Bill Clank, you are up.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks to all of you guys. Hey, Michael, thanks to you for being here, but also I have something from Michael that not many of you have. I have a Michael Mays autograph. Actually, it's not a Michael Mays autograph. It's a Willie Mays autograph that Michael signed. Back in the day, he was doing that when you would send things in through the mail. It's okay. I always think of Michael whenever I see it. I'm going to talk to you briefly about a couple of games in 1962, real briefly one in 64, and then Mays Day in 83. In 1962, and if any of you are hackers, I'll give you a hint. If you want to hack into anything that I have online, it's 1962 and Giants are the passwords for almost everything I own. But I trust all of you, naturally. You're good guys. You're not going to do anything. It was a game the day after the game that Norm talked about, which was May 26th, 62. That was a Saturday night. Mays did win it in extra innings, and Norm, that's in his mind. The next day was my 13th birthday. My dad took my best friend who lived next door, who I talked to almost every month still. I've only known the guy since 1958. He took Roger and I to that game. We sat behind home plate, first row, upper deck, and watched a doubleheader. It wasn't just a doubleheader. It was the only time Willie Mays ever got in a fight. It was the Mets. Craig brushed back Cepeda. Cepeda charged the mound. He had hit him, and they broke it up, and Cepeda went to first on it. Mays was already on second at that time, and they tried a pickoff play to second base. And I don't know, Willie slid back in really hard. That's what I remember. I can still see it like many of you do in your own mind. And he slid in very hard, and Elio Chacon, I guess, got spiked, but that's baseball. But Elio took it a step further. He wanted to duke it out with Willie. Willie just picked him up and threw him into center field. It was, and Roger, who I talked to, when we've talked about this, Roger says, Bill, that's the only time I ever saw adults fight. And I hadn't thought about it. When you're 12 or 13 years old and you live in Palo Alto and everything's kind of real neat and no problems, you didn't see adults fight, but we saw it that day. Move ahead to the last game of that season. My dad, it was the 30th of September. They were playing the Colt 45s. Everything was on the line. My dad agreed to take me after church to the game. We sat on the first base side, and I saw Willie Mays hit a ball to left field. I think John and others may agree. It may have been the longest ball hit the left field. That fastball that he hit off of Turk Farrell just rocketed out of there. That won the game, but it didn't win the pennant. All of us were sitting, listening to Russ Hodges, who was picking up the broadcast out of LA to figure out whether they were going to have a playoff. And I always remember those famous words. Gilliam pops up. We got to play him. And immediately my dad went and stood in line, and we got tickets for the first playoff game the next day. Of course, the Giants, they just beat up on the Dodgers that day. And, like others, I had the flu that Monday morning, and, naturally I went to that game. Move ahead real quickly to 64. There's a book that's coming out in the next couple of months called Baseball Memories. It's about 150 baseball memories. Baseball memory number 105 is mine. I'll give you a hint what it was. It was May 22nd, 1964. It was a Friday night. I took the Greyhound bus up with my next door neighbor, the other next door neighbor, and we went to the 90-cent bleachers. The final out, he called for the ball. He didn't get it. I got it. That's the story, and it's in baseball memories. Finally, and this is a little bit on the raucous side, I know, but I'll tell it anyways. This was Willie Mays Day, 1983. And Mays, you know, I was able to get down on the field and take photos of Willie close up. Dick Dobbins, some of you knew the late, great Dick Dobbins, the greatest PCL collector that ever lived. You know, he saw me at the game. He said, Bill, come on down. I'll get you on the field. So I went down. I had a nice 35 millimeter. I'm taking pictures. And afterwards he says, hey, look, we got a lot of good pictures. Let's go in the clubhouse. So we went in the clubhouse. And of course, I had my Willie Mays program, which at that time wasn't autographed by Willie Mays and Leo DeRocher. But I said, you know, I know I'm going into the clubhouse and I'm going to break the rules. I got one shot at this deal. I asked Mays for an autograph, and he said, you know, no fine. He signed it. And then I sidled over to DeRocher. That's the only two that I wanted, because they were the only two that mattered that were in that clubhouse that day. And before I got a chance to ask him anything, an announcer from ESPN came up. Now, remember, this is 1983. ESPN really came in about 1979. He walked up to Leo, and we all know what Leo says to people. He said, you know, introduced myself, I'm so-and-so from ESPN, and Leo just shot right back to him. What the hell is ESPN? It was that new. Nobody even knew what it was. I bet Willie knew, but Leo didn't. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Willie, I love you. Michael, thank you for signing the autographs for Willie. I know they're fake. I don't give a darn. I got a Michael Mays autograph. Thank you.
That's great, Bill. Dave Lippman, you're up. Dave, unmute.
Okay. First off, I want to thank everybody for being here. Gary, I want to thank you for setting this up. Michael Mays, you must have had some interesting experiences when your parents went in to chat with your teachers and parent-teacher conference night. I also want to thank John Shea. I just put his book on my Kindle list. If Jay Horwitz is still here, I want to thank him for getting me the best baseball job I ever had, which was being associate editor of Mets Inside Pitch. And I think I earned it with all these rain checks from when the team stank from 1978 to 1984. I was the associate editor from a chunk of 84 to September 12th, 1985, when he fired me on what was Baseball Tuesday. So I didn't get to be associate editor for the great run in 1986, which pisses me off to this day, because I would have loved to have been a baseball lifer. Instead, all I have are the rain checks and the Jack Lang official scorebook. As far as Willie Mays goes, I'm wearing the t-shirt of the catch, and I only saw him play in 1972 when my grade school safety patrol squad made its annual trek to Shea Stadium to watch the Mets. And they played the Dodgers, and I forgot to bring out my signs that said PS41 loves the Mets, which annoyed my mother very much because she worked in them and then I forgot to bring them with me. But he was playing first base. Now, my grandfather and my father had told me before we went out there that Willie was the greatest center fielder of all time. He could hit, run, throw, hit with power, field, and so on. And there he was on first base. I was like, what? What's the greatest center fielder of all time doing in first base? Well, what the heck did I know? I was in the 4th grade. And they played the Dodgers, and I can't tell you how the game came out, because in the 7th inning, we all had to leave, which was another thing that tore me off. I mean, what do you mean we have to leave the game? Well, no, we got to leave. Why do we do? Because we can't get caught in the crowds when the game ends. I said, no, we got to see it. Come on, let's go, Lippman. So that was it. And I can't tell you what he did. I know they played the Dodgers. So I don't have the scorebook, so I can't even tell you how it came out or who pitched. But flash forward, and I think all of you know this by now. In 2010, I couldn't go to the big breakfast in New York because I had to work an event for my job with Mark Zuckerberg when he was giving a huge sum of money to the Newark public schools, which the kids never saw. And I had to do the media check-ins, and that included Geraldo Rivera and his formidable mustache. And being a Navy veteran, as soon as I saw Geraldo, I wanted to say, "Hey, Geraldo, so what do you think of all those guys you let get killed in Afghanistan?" But I kept my mouth shut because I also wanted to keep my job. But 2012, I did, and 2014, I did get to go and represent myself and my father and grandfather. And of course, as we both know, Willie was at both breakfasts because I think most of you guys who live in New York were there. And the first one, a guy there told a good story about Willie batting against Don Newcomb and Roy Campanella trying to distract him by inviting him to a steak dinner after the game. And Willie saying, "Yeah, that sounds like fun. How do you want your steaks? I'll have them this way." And Willie, of course, even though he's chatting with DiMaggio, with Campanella rather, belts a home run off of Newcomb. And when he comes around bases, Campanella's waiting for him. And Willie says, "So what time's the barbecue, Roy?" And Campanella doesn't have an answer. And everybody laughs, and including Willie. And he says, "Well, I always hit Newcomb pretty well." So 2014. Giants back in town again. Giant guy says, "We seem to come here every 2 years," and everybody cheers. And I brought along a bunch of Mace things from his autograph, and his escort says he doesn't autograph stuff anymore. Obviously he's got the vision trouble. He can't see, which is too bad. But he so he takes his place in the podium, go around to the questions, and I get up, and the first thing I do is I tell everybody about the Society for American Baseball Research chapter meeting that's taking place after breakfast down at the Mid-Manhattan Library. So when you're done, follow me down Fifth Avenue, and I'll take you there. Then the second thing I do is I turn to Willie and I say, "As a fellow veteran, I want to thank you for something you did that was more important than any home run or any hit you ever got." And he says, he doesn't say anything. Everybody's just looking and wondering. And I say, "And that's serving our country as a member of the armed forces in time of war." And then there's this dead silence for 20 to 30 seconds. And everybody there, you can see the wheels turning in their brain, and then it hits, and he lost 2 potentially fantastic years to the Korean War. Now we all know he didn't go up the line. He was in New Jersey, but he could have gone up the line. And I know the thin line it was between going up the front and not, because when my dad was in Fort Lewis, Washington, the sergeant there looks at Dad's papers and says, "If you stay here 1 week, you will not be eligible to go to Korea because you don't have that much time left in the army." And this sergeant looks at Dad and says, "So if you pay me $500, I can lose this paperwork for a week." And Dad looks at him and says, "Finish the forms and get me on that troop ship." And I didn't have to ask him why he did that. I mean, he just went straight to the connection when he told me this story, which it only took him 40 years to tell. And that was, he knew that if he paid the money, yeah, he could stay out of Korea and not have to fight and risk his own life. But the poor schmuck who went in his place might get killed, and that would be on his conscience. And sure enough, Dad goes to Korea, and on his last day with Item Company of the 31st Infantry, the whole company was assigned to attack something called Jane Russell Hill, which was probably named for the appropriate reasons. and half of the company, including his commanding officer, got killed. And Dad was the company clerk. He had to line up the bodies when they were brought back and get their information for the casualty report. And this stupid warrant officer told Dad, go up on the hill and find the acting CO and get recommendations for medals. And Dad just ignored him because A, he was drunk, B, Dad was going home. And then the Jeep arrived to take Dad home, and the Jeep driver said, hey, you got to go get your buddy Joe Macedonia, who was from Dad's neighborhood in Upper Manhattan. He's going home too. This Dad would go for. So Dad climbed up that hill under shot and shell, finds Joe Macedonia hiding behind what the British Army calls a sanger, a big rock, and taps Joe and says, don't make too much noise, follow me, we're both going home. They both go back down the hill into the company area. There's country music playing on the AFRCS loudspeakers. He gets in the Jeep, they go home. And as I say, for 40 years, Dad wouldn't talk about it until I handed him the official history of the battle that we bought at the Smithsonian. But he could never listen to country music. Anytime it was on the radio, he'd turn it over. So I said this to Willie, 30 seconds of dead silence, and then everybody applauds, realizing what it was about. Then finally, last thing I said was, Willie, I'd like to ask you, aside from yourself, who was the best defensive center fielder you ever saw? And he sits there for a moment. He must be having a little hearing trouble now, I guess. Somebody tells him what it is, the question is, and he gets in this very diplomatic response. And he says, I don't want to single anybody out, so many guys, but finally says, I think I like that guy in Seattle. And it didn't take much for anybody in the room, including me and him, to realize, oh, you mean Ken Griffey Jr., don't you? So I was very impressed by how Willie was able to name the best defensive center fielder he ever saw, without naming names or annoying anybody else. And then somebody else asked him about two guys who had just died that week. One of them was Ernie Banks, and he said what he thought about Ernie Banks, great hitter, great shortstop, and so on. And somebody else noted that Alvin Dark had just died. And Willie's answer was to talk mostly about how he was the captain and the leader of the New York Giants, but avoided saying anything about him as the questionable manager of the San Francisco Giants. So, it was very interesting to see this guy talking. And I just, looking back, I just wish I could have gotten a chance to see him play the way my father and grandfather did, because I was just born far too late. I mean, he was pretty much a story to me until I started reading, books like this, or, the Hirsch biography, and of course, good thing I have him right next to me, Willie's Time by Charles Einstein, which if you haven't read it, it's too good a book. You got to read it. I mean, it's not only the life of Willie, it's like the history of the 5 presidents he played under, and the baseball in America that he played in. And it's only then that I really began to appreciate just what a great ball player this guy is, and what a great, even better human being he is. And I think the most weird story I ever heard about him was this: he was playing golf in New Jersey at this Shishi club, and these 2 rich white guys say, Willie goes off, and these 2 rich white guys say, well, who was that guy? One of the caddies? And Willie's buddy says, no, that was Willie Mays. And the 2 white guys drop their clubs and run off after Willie to catch his autograph. And I said, oh, hypocrisy at large. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. You know, I really, you know, I'm sorry I didn't get to see him play too much. I really admire him, but I really hope you can tell us what happened at your parent-teacher conferences, because I bet your teachers were, as soon as they faced your dad, they were afraid to give you anything less than a B+.
Thank you, Dave.
Gary, you still there?
Yeah, we're here.
It's Mike. I gotta jump. I just wanted to say thank you for this. Definitely Adam for everything he did. John Shea doing your thing. As always, love you, John.
Mike, before you
Yeah.
leave, I don't know if you were here. We are donating this money to your dad's Say Hey Fund.
My man.
All right, so this will be going out. We might be getting a few more checks, but it's going to go out next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
You rock. And I just want to say for the record, I don't know what Bill Clinton is talking about. He needs a CAT scan. If I ever sign anything for my dad, he'd throw me in the outfield, but he needs to call me about that.
All right, I'll read. He's here. There you go. Charles, you are up.
Take care, Michael.
Take care, guys.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
I had to unmute myself. I unfortunately, not disparaging age, I would never do that. Unfortunately, did not get to see Willie Mays play, but I do have, well, I've got multiple Willie Mays stories, having lived in San Francisco most of my life. I think my best story, I think it's one of my best stories, was in the winter of 1992, after the McGowan Group had saved the Giants from going to Tampa Bay, and they had signed Barry Bonds, and in Union Square, San Francisco, they're gonna, you know, kind of unveil Barry Bonds to the Bay Area and San Francisco and the media, and they're waiting for Barry, and I guess he was late coming in from the airport, and Willie Mays is there, and they're up on this stage thing, and some photographer says, you know, Mr. Mays, could you come to the, you know, could you come and sign some autographs? So he moves his chair to the very edge of the stage. I thought I was going to have a heart attack because I thought, what happens if Willie Mays falls into the crowd? I'm like, that would not be good. So, you know, people were handing him all sorts of stuff to sign. And I got this signed by Willie Mays.
Very nice.
And
Nice.
that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
All right, Charles. Thank you. Hey, Renee, the man of many hats tonight. You are up.
The reason why I chose those hats, I think, is pretty obvious. You know,
No crying, by the way.
this is a fantastic group. When I first joined the Historical Society, loved the stories, everything about the New York Giants, everything about Willie Mays, everybody's individual stories about what they saw, their reactions. Loved it, ate it up, can't get enough of it. This group, same thing, can't get enough of it. It's one of the greatest joys for me to be a part of this group, to talk about him, to hear a story that I haven't heard. So my different hats expressed my love for the man. You know, my mom got me into this years ago, and you know, my story goes with what Bill had said, as well as Mars. I was with the Historical Society, and Willie Mays was going to be there, and I rushed over there like Billy Joel tickets were going to be on sale right now. They're opening up the windows right now for like 1 hour. And I raced over there, and I was sad that I wasn't anywhere close. And like Bill said, you know, when everybody went into the room, you know, historically, all the speakers were at the end of the table. And, you know, Bill, I think we were sitting next to each other, because when I sat there, I was really angry with myself. What did I do? He's going to be all the way over there, you know, and it's not that far looking back on it. And there he was. He sat right across from us. I was like, my hands were shaking. I'm not going to lie. And, you know, he talked about, you know, his style of game, the games he played in. And, you know, he kind of opened up the floor for people to speak. And And that was that's my Willie Mays story of how I met him. And my story was kind of brought up many times. It was Mother's Day. The tickets I bought was weeks ago. There was no trade yet. So, you know, it was Mother's Day, you know, go to Manufacturers Hanover, you know, stand online, the guy's making a phone call, you know, to find out he's playing. And they gave away straw hats. And, you know, looking back on it years from now, I wish I would have saved that straw hat my mom wore. It was the same hat that Joan Payson wore. Anyway, he hits the home run. We're flipping out. We're going crazy. I'm going to see him more so than reading in the papers, trying to follow what's going on with the Giants and stuff like that. So now we're going to see him. And loved every minute of every opportunity that I got a chance to see him play, whether it was on TV or at the ballpark at Shea. And you know, so I told him this story about that game, and he said at the end of my story, he goes, "How's your mom?" And he said, "No, she's fine. She's fine. She's really going to be psyched about this." And he said, "Well, tell her I said hello." I lost it right outside of the joint. I was very young, so I didn't lose it until I got into the train, got on my way home, and I told my mom this, and she was like, "Wow, wow, wow." So, you know, my love for the man and his exploits and his enthusiasm just goes crazy. I mean, I stayed home. I stayed home on Willie Mays night to watch that game. I was upset when he said, "Goodbye, America." I said, "No, you can't go." When they played in Oakland, and I'm exaggerating. I'm really exaggerating, but it seemed forever. Standing ovation. I lost it. I said, this can't be it. This can't be it. Fast forward, you hear stories and you go, how true is this? Will the Mets ever retire his number? I was like floored. This is not going to happen. Why is it not going to happen? I told Gary when I was part of this group, we got to get Jay Horowitz involved. We got to do, and he said, well, we're trying. I'm watching Old Timers game. I'm going like, wow, this, that. When they make the announcement, you could tell my wife, lost it. The happiest day, lost it. The fact that we still talk about him is like so beautiful. The Say Hey Willie Mays documentary, I'm watching it, loving it. I'm going to myself as I'm watching this thing, it's about to end. They're not going to talk about the Mets retiring his number. And there it is on the credits, lost it. I said, yes. This man is getting his due. Now we fast forward and Adam comes up with this fantastic idea. You know what? Keep it up. Keep the stories up, guys. It never gets old. Thank you for this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Renee, thank you for your passion and your emotion. You bring more of that to this group than any of us do. Some of us are just almost detached sometimes when we talk about it, but you bring the emotion. You bring the passion we should all have. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks, Renee. Mr. Labiner, you are up. Ted, unmute, Ted. You have to unmute, Ted, otherwise we can't hear you. All right, we'll go to Phil. Philip, you're going to go, and then we'll come back to Ted. Go ahead, Philip, unmute. Unmute your, there you go.
I got you. All right, look, I'm new to the group. I mean, I've been following the group. I watched some of the Zooms. Wednesday night is not the best. Weekday night's not the best for me. I'm going to be brief. You may, I just want to say two preliminaries, and then I have three short points to make. First preliminary is, you may know me as the author of, somebody mentioned the SABR. I think it was, I don't recall who it was, but I published an article in 1999 on Pete Rose, arguing that he was an average hitter. I like doing that because it upsets a lot of people in the Midwest. The second thing is I want to mention something. I want to concur with Renee. It's funny. Sometimes somebody retires, it's the end of an era. It was inconceivable to me that the man would not be playing. I saw him at Shea Stadium in his baseball dotage, and we know he didn't have all the skills that he had. It didn't matter. It was hard for me to conceive this. So I'm going to give you my 3 stories, and none of them has to do with meeting him, and I promise to be brief. I lived in Far Rockaway. I don't know how many New Yorkers are here. I assume most of you are. Far Rockaway is pretty far from the Polo Grounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had no money. So I think I went to 1 game at Ebbets Field when my friend's parents took me. Of course, the Dodgers-Giants game. One Sunday, my mother packed me lunches, got on the subway, and I went up to the Polo Grounds. I might have been 11. No, 10, maybe 10. I went with a friend. And I want to say something about what life was like in those days. She gave me a can of soda, which was a big deal. We didn't drink soda in our house, too much sugar. And I didn't bring a can opener. And I went into a grocery store in the corner in Harlem, near the ballpark. And I asked the woman if I could borrow a can opener. And she said, why? And I explained I was going to the ball game. It was a doubleheader with the Braves. Of course, all my sandwiches were gone by the 3rd inning of the first game. It was impossible. Starved the rest of the day. And she said, well, why don't you just take it? And she gave the thing to me, obviously an African-American woman in this grocery store. And she gave it to this stranger kid who was going to the ballpark because she knew that otherwise I wouldn't be able to drink my soda. So that's one. The other time I was at the Polo Grounds was on the last game in 1957 when my best friend, I was 11, so we must have been in about 6th grade. And her father was a rabbi, but he had been rooting for the Giants since the 20s. He used to love to recite the Giants roster from 1926, including starting pitchers. And he took us up there to see the last game the Giants would play in New York. And of course, afterwards, I was on the field. I tore up some grass, took it home in center field, took it home, put it in a jar because that was grass where Willie Mays walked. I mean, I never saw him, but I kept it. Of course, like everybody else who had baseball cards from those days, I got to say, I have no idea how I ever lost the thing. One thing I know for sure is my mother did not throw it out. All right. And he left. And of course they left, but primarily, to us, it was he left. And I have Dodger fan. I like to say I know some very cultivated people who were Dodgers fans who to this day won't mention their name because they left Brooklyn. But Giants fans weren't the same, and you have to ask yourself why. And one of the reasons is that there was an attachment to him that kept our interest in the team to San Francisco. I have to say my interest came and went and waned a little bit over the years. It's never gone away. You should see the outfits my kids wear. Now of course, with MLB, I ruins my sleeping, but I can see the Giants all the time. But it was Willie. He transcended it. And the last thing I want to say is how he played. The people who don't know the game so much like to talk about how flamboyant he was. He ran, his cap would come off. But the fact was, he was not a flamboyant ball player. He was very, very elegant. He used what I would say is economy of motion. He did as little as needed to be done, which is elegance in my view, to get the job done. You see a lot of catches in center field that are great catches. They're great catches because the guy could barely catch up to the ball. But Willie would get there and nonchalantly take the ball in a basket, right? If he had to make a throw, yeah, he might throw so hard he fell on the ground, but that needed it. And he was running around the bases because he needed it. But otherwise, in the batter's box and everywhere else, the man had a highly elegant feel to him. And it made the game a better game to watch. And it was a lesson to a little kid that, you can be great and you don't have to be trumpeting it all the time, because in the end, it comes to roost. Everybody knows you're the best there ever was. So I have to say 51 years later, I think 73, right, was his last season with the Mets. Here we are. Of course, we're all old. Here we are, and we're still talking about this man as a living presence in the game and in our lives. That says something. You know, as my current rabbi says, you never know what effect you're going to have on somebody's life. And here's a man who's had effect in a lot of people's lives, and not because we're childish, but because we knew we were seeing something that was really exceptional in human effort. So that's my story about Willie Mays, and I'm still enthralled. There's nothing I can do about it. So
Well
thank you
put,
for
Bill.
giving me this forum to talk to people who would understand what I'm trying to get at. Thank you.
Before I ask a couple of questions of a couple of people here, is anybody here who did not speak, who couldn't figure out how to raise their hand? Gary Brown, go ahead. Unmute, Gary. Gary, you got to unmute. And Ted, if you could
got
unmute
it.
also.
Got me?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right, we're good?
Oh,
Yep.
Ted, you got to go to the button at the bottom on the left of your screen where it says.
Gary, you go. We'll try to get that on.
All right. Gary, thanks for putting on this evening. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful time. I have a little bit different interaction with Willie. I was in the car business for nearly 30 years, and anybody who knew Mays for more than about 5 minutes or so knew of his love for fancy cars. He got that from Leo. Leo was a Cadillac man, and Willie drove a lot of them and a lot of. And I guess that's where I come in. Late in 1993, I was working for a Lincoln Mercury dealership, and we got a call from another one, Kindle Lincoln Mercury in Cape May Courthouse. And they were looking for a car that we had in stock. And that wasn't unusual. We had a lot of trading partners we dealt with. This time we were on the other end of the line. And the guy from Kindle was in a panic. He said, "Do you have an empty silver town car Cartier?" Meaning just a standard equipment. "Yeah, we do." "Well, it's for Willie Mays." "It's for Willie, he can have whatever he wants. Give me the last 8 of the serial number." So he did. Checked the stock book, we had it. Told the manager, "Kindle wants this car. We okay with it?" "Sure. Tell him to call tomorrow, make the arrangements." So I trust they did. A year later, I'm at an autograph show in New Jersey at the Meadowlands. Mays was there and they wanted to get a ball signed. So I was very lucky that the guy 2 in front of me was wearing a Birmingham Black Barons jacket, and he was chatting Willie up, and Willie seemed to be animated and having a good time. So I give the ball and ticket to the handler. Willie signs the ball, rolls it back to me, and I look him in the eye and said, "You still driving Lincolns?" "How'd you know I was driving Lincolns, man?" "Well, your man Cape May Courthouse called and said it was for you." "Yeah, I got a white one and a silver one." Silver was the one he was after. So go back another 6 years or so, 2001, I'm at the Giants Community Fund golf outing at the Olympic Club. And I finished my round. I said to the guys, "I'll see you inside for a drink in a little while." And I see a big crowd around a car. I said, "It's either Mays or Cepeda." And Cubby was there earlier, he left. And I look and I see where it's Mays. And he's standing, Scout's honor, next to a silver Lincoln Town Car Cartier. And I look at the trunk lid and I see the Kindle sticker on it. I said, "This is too good to be true." So I say to him, "Hey, Will, is that 97? Because they all look alike for about 7 years." He said, "No, man, it's a 94. It's only got 23,000 miles on it." I said, "You know, Bill Kindle got that car from me." And he starts laughing. He said, "Man, you gotta be kidding me." I said, "I can't make this stuff up." And I was working for a Ford dealer at the time. And I said, "We just came out with something. I'll bet this is right up your alley." And Ford had just come out with a reboot of the Thunderbird. And it was faithful to the ones in the 50s, you know, the porthole hardtop, the round taillights, all that. He said, "No, man, I like big cars." And he did, whether it was Lincolns, Caddies, BMW 7 Series, Chryslers, Imperials in the old days. Good Lord, I can still remember that carnation pink Chrysler Imperial they had. Pardon me, Imperial in 1973. I saw him within the players' parking lot at Shea Stadium. And anytime I was fortunate enough to talk to him afterwards, he said, "Oh, just one of your old car guys from New Jersey." "Oh, yeah, I remember." And we'd have fun for a couple of minutes. And he was always very nice, and very kind and gracious. And it was a little bit different interaction than a lot of you have had, but Aside from that, he was still the greatest player I ever saw.
Thank you, Gary. I don't think we can get Ted on because he doesn't know how to unmute. I got a question for Brad Mangian. Brad, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Gary.
We all know you're a famed photographer out there. Two quick questions. Your most sacred picture of Willie and your favorite shot of him.
It's hard. Probably the first time I really got to shoot him, I started shooting the Giants in '87 when I was 22. And the first time I really shot him was an old timers game in '88 against, it was the Giants old timers. It's back when they did old timers games, when they were sponsored by Equitable. And before Upper Deck started doing them in the early '90s. And it was incredible when you look back. I look back at my pictures. It was Mays and Marichal and Cepeda and all those guys against the Cardinals, and it was Gibson and Brock. Actually, Cepeda dressed up, played for the Cardinals in the old timers game, but Brock was there, and Gibson pitched and homered in the game, and I'll never forget Mays coming on the field, coming out of the clubhouse down the right field line at Candlestick, walking onto the field. I have these pictures of him carrying a couple bats, heading towards the batting cage. And then, Willie jumping in the cage, yelling at everybody and laughing. And I have these pictures of Willie in the cage. And, back, that was 88 when, he could still be, a semblance of Willie Mays. He could still move and swing the bat and get around. And, and I've, over the years, I've shot him in a million on-field ceremonies like crazy. But probably one of my favorite pictures is I had the good fortune of helping my really awesome friend, John Shea, with his incredible book, 24. I was like John's picture editor. I worked with John for over a year on gathering all these, we had over 90 pictures in the book of Willie. And one of the last pictures I shot was to help promote the book. It was right before COVID in February of 2020, when Willie wanted to visit the Giants clubhouse, and Gabe Kapler was the Giants' new manager. It was right before spring training. And so Willie was hanging out in Mike Murphy's office in the Giants clubhouse because Kapler was going to be there. It was right after the 49ers lost their last Super Bowl to the Chiefs. And I was there, and I was going to get some pictures of John Shea and Willie hanging out and chatting. And it was one of these days when Willie was in a great mood. Of course, Renee was with him, but it was very low key. And it's just Willie and John hanging out in Murph's office, telling stories. And it's probably one of my favorite pictures of Willie, because it was the last great time he ever made an appearance in the Giants clubhouse before COVID, before he really, his health declined, before he had the hip surgery and stuff. And the smile on Willie's face, the recall of him and John bantering back and forth, and the recall of Willie. And I was born in '65. I knew of Willie Mays through the radio and stuff as a kid, but baseball didn't click into me till I was 8. In '73, I knew when he was traded to the Mets, but in '73, I was locked in. I watched the '73 season. I watched every pitch of the '73 series. And so Willie was asking me about if I ever saw him play, and I immediately talked about the '73 series. And then he immediately started, I got to say, Willie just would rip on Yogi Berra. Hated Yogi as a manager. Oh my God. And I had heard this from John, and I got to say the funniest stories, because famously the last out of the '73 series was Wayne Garrett. Darryl Knowles is a lefty pitching for the A's. And there's 2 outs in the top of the 9th at the Coliseum, Game 7. And Yogi sends up Wayne Garrett, a lefty, and Willie's on the bench. Willie wants to hit. and Yogi leaves Willie Mays on the bench. And Wayne Garrett strikes out. And it famously in John's book, 24, Willie gets in his Mustang in his full Mets uni and without changing or showering and drives home to Atherton. And we talked about this in Murph's office, and I have these great pictures of John and Willie. Sorry if I'm going on too long. It was a great hearing Willie tell these stories in a private moment with his dear friend John, who he trusts so much, and there's no one around, no one's asking for autographs. It was just really cool, and to be able to witness Willie and John and their relationship, which I knew so well from working with John in the book, and what John was able to get from Willie, because every time John went to Willie's house, John would be there for 5 or 6 hours, and then John would call me driving home. He's like, "Oh, I'm leaving Willie's now, you know. Oh God, you know, we had Chinese food today, or we had Jack in the Box," and but he would get all these great stories, and it was just so. And what you guys do here is amazing, and it's just. I'll leave one more thing. As a photographer, I always told this to John. One of the great things about Willie, his face. I mean, I wish I was old enough to have photographed him as a player, because he moved beautifully as an athlete. I mean, we always talk about his body. You know, the guy never worked out or lift weights, but he was sculpted, and he has this iconic face, this great face, the great smile. And to be able to shoot him at any point in his life was really pretty amazing. Thanks.
Brad. And once again, you got to own this book, not only for what John writes, but Brad's pictures. Ted, could you unmute, or are we done? There's a button there with a video camera.
How about me?
Hey, how are you, Arthur?
It's almost my bedtime.
All right, take us home.
I got a few, just a short story. I am probably not quite the oldest member, but I am a Giant fan, have gone to games from 1936. My dad told me stories of watching Christy Mathewson pitch against Three Finger Brown. But the serendipitous thing that I want to describe is I was drafted in 1951. And I was told I had to report at Whitehall Street on May 28th. Well, several days before that, I decided to go down to Philadelphia to meet my best friend, who had just recently become engaged to a local girl. We went out to dinner, and the evening was very young when we were finished, and we didn't know what to do. I realized the Giants are playing at Shibe Park. Why don't we go over there? So the three of us go to Shibe Park, and we're up in the upper left field stands. And I looking out on the field, and they're practicing, but suddenly they are working out the final lineup is out there, and they're hitting some fungos to the center fielder. And I said, "Who is that black kid out there? What happened to Bobby Thompson?" Well, it turns out that that was Willie Mays' first major league game.
Okay. Thanks.
Am I unmuted?
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, what? Go ahead, Arthur. Continue.
Okay, Gary.
Okay, Ted, you're after Arthur. Arthur, go ahead.
Okay. And as I said, I'm an old-time Giant fan. My father said he took me to games in 36 and 37. But the one I remember as the oldest one was watching Mel Ott play third base in 1938 because Lou Chiosa, the third baseman, broke his leg in a collision with JoJo Moore. and Art played the rest of the season at third base. One other little story. In 1941, my mother said, okay, you can go to the game. Here's a cream cheese and jelly sandwich, and here's $1. So I used a nickel to get to the ballpark and a nickel saved to go home. 55 cents to get into the bleachers. And then I had money left for a hot dog and a Coke, which I, of course, used. So with $1, I went to the game, came home, and had a great time. Back in 1941, of course, sitting in the bleachers, I did see Connie Ryan in his first major league game play second base with Billy Jurgis, and he initiated a triple play in his first major league game. That's, I don't want to take up your time. I could tell you stories for an hour, but it is kind of late, and I thank you for just this opportunity.
You're very welcome.
I'm sure there aren't too many guys living, certainly Giant fans, who saw Willie Mays in Philadelphia on his first major league game. By the way, Willie didn't get a hit, but he did sort of draw a cheer, not a cheer, but something from the crowd by catching a ball in left center and throwing a strike to third base. And the guy who was on second, who had started for third, went right back. Of course, everybody knows that Willie went hitless for another couple of games before homering against Warren Spahn for his first major league hit. I'm going to save it, whatever else I have, maybe for 224. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome, Martha. Thank you. Ted, last one.
Okay, I've heard, and we all have heard these wonderful Willie Mays stories, which are obviously all true and all speak to his greatness. But I wanted to say something about the San Francisco Giants or the New York Giants that speaks for them. I've been going to the Giant games since I was maybe 10 years old, maybe a little younger, not 10 or 11. And my mother would give me the instructions how to, I lived in New Jersey at the time. She'd tell me how to get on the subway, change to, I think, the D train and take the A train over to, from 59th Street. But many years ago now, when the organization was first formed, when they were still meeting in person, they arranged for the dedication of the Bush Steps, which are the metal steps that go down from, I think, Coogan's Bluff into what was the Polo Grounds parking lot. And I think, and I'm almost sure, the San Francisco Giants paid for those steps. And they had a dedication to which we were all invited to dedicate the steps. The Mets were playing against the San Francisco Giants. The San Francisco Giants not only paid for the steps, they sent ball players over to the dedication and to meet with the group. And it was heartening to hear why they did it. It was because they wanted the spirit of the Giants, the New York Giants, to be, and the history of New York Giants to be relevant. And so they sent active players over, two pitchers over for the dedication. And not only did they pay for the steps, that they sent the players over, and I asked the players, the two pitchers, why they sent it, and it's just that. They wanted the spirit of the Giants to be alive. And I could say that is true of no other baseball team, including the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Los Angeles Dodgers, who left without a word. So let's hear it for the San Francisco Giants and the New York Giants. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Well, we started with our leadoff hitter, John Shea. John, any final thoughts before I wrap it up?
Boy, not really. I mean, everything was beautifully covered, it seems. Everybody's so eloquent and from the heart. And I love the word elegant when describing Willie. I got to steal that. That's tremendous. He was elegant.
You can use it without attribution.
Okay, that's what we do. Yeah, we steal it as our own. But yeah, Philip and Renee, man, that's awesome. And Howard and Gary and Tom and of course Brad and Michael Mays. This is like a once in a lifetime thing, man. Just like 2424. Never see this again. You know, a real-time tribute to the greatest ever by people who saw him play, people who hung out with him as kids, driven to the ballpark, met him at shows, watched him, you know, Shea Stadium, the Polo Grounds, Candlestick, Seal Stadium. Not sure anyone saw him in Birmingham, but that would be cool to hear from somebody. But anyway, thanks a lot, man. A lot of kind words, but that's really,
I should tell everyone.
it's really back at you because this is all what it's for. It's for the people who love Willie because Willie loves you all. You know, it's mutual.
I hear that the major leagues are having their game, I think, next year in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, that throwback game that they have
In June.
in June of this year.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
it's June 20th.
I've got my hat and I'm gonna go.
Sounds great.
You better get your tickets soon because fewer than 10,000 seats, and it's probably not going to be easy to get a spot. Yeah, June 20th at Rickwood, Giants, Cardinals, and hopefully Bill Greason will be there. Bill Greason is 99, and Bill Greason played with Willie on the 1948 Black Barons. They were rookies. He was much older because he had just come out of World War II. He was at the Battle of Iwo Jima, and he's still going strong in Birmingham. He was the first African-American pitcher on the St. Louis Cardinals, and he and Willie are the only surviving players who played in both Major League Baseball and the Negro Leagues through 1948, the last year of the Negro Leagues World Series, and the final year that Major League Baseball is counting when they're incorporating all the Negro League stats from 1920.
Thank you so much for.
Gary,
Yes, Joanne.
sorry to jump in here, but something that strikes me, listening to all of you, you all talk about your fathers, how they brought you to love baseball. Ted has often talked about his mother, giving him instructions, going to the games as a young boy. How many of us really can say, and I know this from myself, my brother driving to Pennsylvania to pick up my nephew to bring him to watch the Mets play here in New York. How many are really going to have those experiences going forward? I mean, that tie had broken because of the price and everything else, but the stories that you all shared tonight was really from the love. The stories of a kid jumping in Willie Mays' car. I mean, who has these opportunities? And today it won't happen. This is a treasure, and thank you for keeping it alive.
Well, look, Gary, let me just jump in. That's why I mentioned our grandson, our 10-year-old grandson, and me passing the Willie Mays ball to him, his favorite player being Aaron Judge. It is continuing at least somewhere in our family.
Thank you, Harvey. I just want to shout out to everybody for making the Willie Mays Preservation Society evening a great, we've been on here for 3 hours, well worth it. Everybody had great stories. So we will keep that name until after the Say Hey Appreciation Day festivities conclude. I will keep you up to date with any articles that come out and what the Giants plan. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for coming, and take good care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. God
Night,
bless.
Gary.
Good night.
God
Good
bless.
night.
Thank you.
Doing something? Oh, he's sleeping.
That was a long evening. It was really good.
A great night.
I knew it would be this long.